Hey everybody, and welcome. Thanks for joining us for our 2022 Extra Life fundraiser. We are folks from Digital Eclipse. We're a developer here in the Bay Area of California, and there's going to be a lot of people on the stream that you get to meet over the course of the next 3 days. We're going to be streaming every day from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. today, Friday, November 4th, as well as Saturday and Sunday. Tons of retro games, lots of stuff that you probably haven't seen in a long, long time. Or maybe have never seen before and will get a new appreciation for, because when we roll retro, we roll deep at Digital Eclipse. Hey, everybody, introduce yourselves, please.
I am Stephen Frost. I'm the head of production at Digital Eclipse, and I'm glad to be here doing something for the kids, trying to help out the kids.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy Williams. I'm an engineer here. Also glad to be doing something for the kids.
I'm the one who's not happy to be doing anything for the kids. I hate kids. I mean, they're delicious.
We're all kids at heart, really. So
Yeah,
we're doing something
right.
in a selfish way, we're doing stuff for ourselves, too.
Yeah, I'm Dan Emmerich. I'm one of the content editors here, and all three of us are just some of the people who've worked on the title screen that you're seeing right now for Atari 50.
Only the title screen, though. We only worked on the title screen.
This is the world premiere stream of Atari 50, and we're only going to show you this animated colored ribbon. That's it.
Yeah.
No, this is this title is coming out next week, Friday the 11th, with our friends at Atari. They gave us permission to do this special for this fundraiser. So you are getting the very, very first world premiere stream of Atari 50. You may have seen a couple of things, like Jeremy worked on a game called Vector Sector, and Vector Sector showed up in an arcade cabinet over the summer. I think those are the only people that have gotten to play it in person.
Quadr Tank was there too, briefly.
But people didn't even notice that Quadr Tank was there.
Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, it was like I mean, who ships a homemade arcade cabinet with a hidden game in it and then doesn't tell anybody how to access the
Apparently
game?
Jeremy.
Jeremy does.
No.
And if you are in the Bay Area, tomorrow, Saturday the 5th, we will be at the Midway in San Francisco as part of Day of the Devs, and you will be able to see some more on the game there tomorrow in person. Otherwise,
And play it.
And meet Jer.
You'll be able to play it. You'll be able to ask
amongst-
Jeremy questions
yes.
that he will obviously ignore in the chat. I'll be looking at the chat over the next 2 hours. But yeah, we're super proud of this. This is easily, I think, one of the most ambitious things that Digital Eclipse has ever undertaken. It's more than 100 games. It's basically an interactive documentary. It's not just a bag of ROMs, as I like to keep saying. You will be very surprised, hopefully, at the depth. And we've gotten to talk, we've got more than an hour's worth of interviews with the people that actually worked at Atari and made the games that we're going to play. All the games serve to put Atari's history into a sort of context. So you can read about the history, you can learn from the history from the people that made it, and then jump directly into a game. So I guess we should jump directly into a game.
Yeah, and while he's jumping in, I would just say, if during any of these stream sessions you find that you'd like to help and especially support local children's hospitals near us, feel free to go to the bit.ly donate above here. Oops, my fingers cut off. And even if it's $1 or $2, we certainly appreciate it, and it does really go to a good cause in the end, and it supports local hospitals helping and focusing on kids. So
yeah, there's an Oakland hospital, Benioff.
Yep,
a lot
Benioff,
of people just
yep.
yeah. So that's our local hospital. So that's where we're aiming. So Jeremy has jumped straight into the library. At any point during Atari 50, you can just go to the games. We understand, we wanted to put everything in a historical context, give you a real fun narrative way to go through and learn Atari's history, literally from the very beginning in the early 70s all the way through the 90s and even today. We wind up talking about 2600 Homebrew towards the end of the timelines. But you can also just go in and see all of the games, jump into any of those games you want. Every game has box art, every game has a fully scanned manual. The original games that we've done for this, also some of them have original manuals so that you can refer to those as you go. Some of them have internal tutorials like Vector Sector does. And there is some of them support 4 players. Centipede, or not Centipede. What am I thinking of? Warlords.
Warlords, yeah.
Yeah. Warlords, Super Breakout, which we just saw.
Right.
Quadr Tank, one of the new games that's exclusive to this collection. Somebody has already asked, SB64 OG says, do any of the games have online play? They do not.
No, this was not the focus
We
of this.
failed.
Yeah, I mean, it's the unfortunate aspect of whenever we try to do stuff and then people always suggest other options and certainly valid, we could have taken stuff online, but it was just beyond the scope of this this sort of celebration. We are focused more on educating and teaching people about the games, sort of defining this ultimate experience. Like even if you're just a casual Atari fan, this is how you can learn about Atari's influence and impact on the industry and things like that. So that was really, and authenticity of the games and accuracy of the emulation was really our focuses here. And we did put a lot of quality of life improvements here. Just in this games thing, you can sort any way you want by title, platform. There's your most recent played list. You can sort by year. You can skip left and right quickly between the platforms using the triggers. So even in the game sort of carousel, we tried to really make it easy for people. And you may notice, as Jared has been kind of streaming that, there are some manila sort of Atari kind of classified confidential envelopes. And these are actually sort of our Easter eggs. Normally in Digital Eclipse releases, we are big proponents of like everything is accessible. You can just go and explore the way you want to. But Easter eggs and sort of little hidden things like that have always been an aspect of Atari's gaming history, even going all the way back to Adventure, considered one of the first sort of official Easter eggs ever seen sort of in a game, a home video game at least. So we wanted to sort of touch on that a little bit and have a little bit of fun and gamify sort of aspects of this experience while you're learning. So we went in and we hid a couple games in here, and thanks to Dan's genius, we have some riddles that you can try to decipher and figure out what you have to do in order to unlock these games. So it's kind of a fun nod, and like I said, it's a little bonus for people to, as they go through and explore this stuff, they get a little reward if they can figure out these things. But yeah, I mean, even going to this games list, we go in, we do all the stuff that you expect, like for the arcade games, these are some of the biggest arcade games that Atari has been known for, a lot of them being that vector-based kind of experience that Jeremy is such a huge fan of, and where Vector Sector is, kind of coming from, and as far as his love of these experiences, right? And so maybe go into one of these and we have not only like a little description for the games in there, but we spent a lot of time on these bezels, and quite a lot of times trying to accurately replicate what they look like in the arcade. Even from the little notes for strategy that you see here at the bottom of the screen, or little tidbits. They didn't have manuals in the arcades, so they had to display the information on the screens or on the bezels for you to kind of decipher how to play it. So we kind of replicated that. In some of these games also, like Fire Truck and things like that, there's actually lights that are part of the bezel display that would give players important information or useful information, and we actually accurately replicate that too. So here we are, 1979. It's crazy. It's how long, this is a 50-year celebration, but you sometimes lose track of how long Atari has been around,
I'm a big fan of the arcade era particularly, and I collect these flyers.
Right.
So a lot of these I had seen, but I hadn't looked in detail. But I loved that Atari Space, they had a division in CoinUp called
Right.
Atari Space that they trademarked, and you'll only see that. These flyers were generally given out to the distributors who were trying to sell machines to local operators.
Right, yeah.
So this was the sales flyer, and that's why it has things like how much does it weigh, and all that stuff is very important. Yeah, Quadr scan. Atari was really big on trademarking funky names for all of their stuff.
This is the best though. Rich wood grain side paneling.
Yes,
which is
it's what you want in a classy 1970s establishment.
Atari was big on the wood paneling, right?
Very.
That's obviously a key thing. It was a popular trend. But what's awesome about this also for people who get the PS5 or Xbox Series version of these games, the assets were scanned at a very high res, 4K res, and so you can see the detail. Hopefully, I don't know how much it'll come across in the stream, but these are very high quality, very high DPI scanned images, and we're able to do that on the PS5 and Xbox Series. Other platforms, especially like the Switch
and PC.
And PC, sorry. Of course, we're looking at PC. So PC and the higher end sort of console platforms. The Switch and other ones, while they have the benefit of being portable, obviously have a lower res images, but you get the benefit of taking them on the go. So if you want If you want both experiences, you got to buy the Switch and maybe like an Xbox Series or PS5
Or
version
a
to get
PS5.
or a PC version. Oh yeah, and like
There you go.
here's the fresh off the box here, or fresh off the box, hot off the press copy of
Straight out of FedEx.
Straight out of FedEx, right?
So we just got our box copy.
Yeah,
so-
exactly. This is what you're going to get when you go to the store and pick it up next Friday. So we're excited for you guys to check it out.
I'm getting all kinds of questions from the chat, as you might imagine. First of all, hey, thanks for showing up, and don't forget this is a fundraiser. So we've got a tally over there and a bit.ly. If you could throw a couple of bucks, if you like what you're seeing, throw a couple of bucks to the Extra Life donor page. We've got several people there that have not yet reached their goals. So again, even $1, $5, something like that, it goes towards the Children's Hospital Benioff here in Oakland. So we're just outside of Oakland. That's our closest.
Yes.
But I wanted to bring out a couple of things. One person asked, Gamma Ray 117 said, what about Marble Madness? Marble Madness is one of the games that Atari no longer owns. The way that the coin-op history has gone is kind of weird. So anything after 1983 that was an Atari coin-op under the label of Atari Games, under that business division, current Atari no longer owns. It's actually owned by Warner Brothers. So you're not going to see any of those. A lot of people have asked, could that be DLC? We don't know what's going to happen in the future. It would be great to be able to do those games at some point because we're big fans of Paperboy and Marble Madness and Rampart. And I mean, some of those we literally have in our arcade here in the studio. But yeah, you're going to be looking at really the earliest arcade games, the 70s through about 1983. We go as far as Major Havoc, iRobot, and Cloak and Dagger. Those are the three latest coin-op games in Atari history that you're going to see here.
I was going to ask Jeremy, the movement of the bezel in the game, what's the thought behind that, and how is it, what impacts that, or?
Yeah, that's a good example of the kind of attention to detail people have here. Our studio director, Mike Micah, took it upon himself to give this all the graphics in the background of Asteroids Deluxe some dimension, because if you go to the arcade, it's actually in multiple planes, so it's not just a solid background. The game does that kind of projection where there's a right angle to mirror that projects, that reflects a monitor that's beneath it, and then there's artwork behind it, so it gives this three-dimensional illusion. But then there's also these different planes of the background, like the asteroid on the right is not in the same spot as the asteroids in the back.
You're AAA? I love your work.
Yeah, thanks. And so he separated it out, then tracked, he looked into the game ROM and figured out where the player was, so that as you move around the screen, there's this really slight parallax.
I see it now.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was in there.
And it's just so subtle, but it's also
it's great.
So true, because it's after we went to California Extreme and played it in person that you say that is really cool, and that's an element of an arcade game that you just don't get at home, when you're playing emulators.
I remember when this was first implemented, I forgot about it and I started playing. I'm like, and I thought I was going to a little, I'm like, what's going on, right? But it's very cool. Again, like as Jared said, there's all these little details that they're hard to go to and talk about all the time because there's so many of them. But this is, I wanted to call this out. This is one just such an example, right?
Yeah. I got a couple more questions. Were you able to get permission to use any of the documentation held by the Strong Museum, says Uberus? Yes, we actually did work with the Strong Museum, so you will see some assets in the timeline that we have original design documents from Centipede. My favorite is Major Havoc. We had Owen Rubin, the creator of Space Duel and Major Havoc and several other arcade games for Atari. He was very generous with his time, came in, told us some great stories, and you'll see videos of his interviews. But
do you want to dive into the timeline real quick?
Yeah, actually, that'd be great. For Major Havoc, we'll get to the Major Havoc story. But yeah, this is the primary interface for Atari 50. For this, again, interactive documentary is the way we've been thinking about it. So it's you can play any of the games at any point while you're traversing through this. But the idea was to give you a sense of where did Atari come from, what did Atari do. A lot of modern gamers, maybe their first console was a 16-bit console, or perhaps they're back to the NES, right, in the 8-bit days. The Atari 2600 was 8-bit as well. It's just, primordial. So a lot of gamers today don't necessarily know that, where sort of their favorite their games came from. We have this. We do have some really cool footage that we were able to find. Chris Kohler did a hero's job helping track this down.
I can't turn
oh,
the
there's Chris Kohler.
I can't turn the volume down. Do you think I should play it? Or?
Yeah, go ahead and play, but let me just set it up. Let me set up the clip, as they say on Late
Go
Night.
for it.
This is a student film called Games Computers Play that was shot at UC Berkeley. And it was recently unearthed, and so it's been remastered. And this is some of the earliest footage that we know that exists of Nolan Bushnell. You're going to see Pong machines on the assembly line at the Atari facility in this clip. So this is not the whole film, but this is the Atari relevant segment. It's like 3 or 4 minutes. You probably haven't seen this before. So yeah, play at least a little bit.
Well, I'd say 30 years to
Oh, show captions.
present. The arcade's been relegated to the back rooms and the side streets, and generally been an unsavory type of place. What we want to do is bring the amusement game to age. If we can give it a new zip and a pizzazz, it's going to be financially successful, as well as, I think, a very serious part in the leisure time activities
So young.
of the American people.
Yeah.
The marriage of traditional
I like to
pinball
think
machines
Atari
and
50 has
computer
zip and
technology
pizzazz.
has resulted
Yeah.
in the birth
Well,
of
what's
a
great about this
different
is
game.
that this is one of the opening videos, and it's young Nolan, and then one of the cappers or the end of this experience is a more recent Nolan.
Modern
interview.
Nolan.
Modern Nolan, like Player 2 Nolan.
Final,
Right?
final form, Nolan.
So there are nice kind of bookshelves or end caps as far as heading into the history of this, and then also ending the experience, right? It comes
Yeah.
full circle.
Yeah, I mean, Nolan is a huge figure, but the nice thing is that throughout Atari 50, you're going to meet a lot of the other people who were working with Nolan or for Nolan or around Nolan, who don't normally get the credit. I mean, you got to give it up to Nolan because he sold the company, he made the company, he founded the company and made it what it was. But
Right.
there's also like Al Alcorn was the very first engineer. We got a chance to talk to Al Alcorn about the birth of Pong. We got to ask, how did Pong come to be from the guy that made Pong? I mean, so we're really happy to be able to pass more of that along. But you're going to see that. You're going to see original interviews as well. And whenever possible, we are showing the original design documents or quotes from interviews that we did with people or that we have been able to find from other sources. A lot of it is original stuff. In this room where we're streaming from, this is like the table is basically where Al Alcorn was sitting. The table is where David Crane, creator of Pitfall for Activision and several Atari games before then, he talks about his Atari games here and what his assignment was to create Outlaw and Canyon Bomber.
I'll just point out that the background here is a Pong board
It's actually the Pong.
Yeah.
that we actually have here in the studio.
Because of course we do.
Because Mike has, I think, a collection of them.
Of course he does.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think what's great about, like we're talking about, there's 5 sort of interactive timelines, right? This is the first one that starts on the early days of Atari. But Jer and the other folks, and as far as designing it, and Chris Kohler and Dan for providing the info and the images and stuff like that, allowing you to sort of have an experience where you can kind of jump around quickly and just see things that interest you. Now, granted, this is all presented chronologically, left to right, but you can skip around, you can view things. We also have a system that actually tracks like when you've completed looking at something. Like you'll see like the little effect that appears after, like right there, that when you've looked at something or interacted with something. And so each timeline you can get up to 100%, and you may get a nice little surprise if you get 100% on all of the timelines.
You
We're not
may.
saying- You may. You may.
As SB64OG was asking, are there hints on how to find those Easter eggs? And yes, there are. There's the little riddles, but there's also there's things that I would say keep exploring. That helps. But yeah, each of these, to unlock that, there is a little riddle that you can solve or may give you a hint. I will say that some of these are pretty darn hard. Some of the things that you have to do to unlock the games are straightforward. Some of them you're going to have a lot of fun finding. But there's at least one that is sort of skill-based that I don't know when I'm going to be able to get that done because I don't know that I have the skill to pull it off. I know what the answer is, but I don't know that I can necessarily do it.
Right.
So there are 6 games, I think, that are hidden.
Is it 5 or 6?
5, 6.
Yeah.
Only a handful.
Yeah.
But you will. Yes, there are little hints there so that you can have fun finding those. Other than that, the rest of the games are fully playable as soon as you boot up what you're seeing now is what you'll see on November 11th when this game comes out.
And what I think is cool about the whole concept of Easter egg, even though it's like a very small portion of this celebration and certainly not the focus of it, is that it harkens back to this classic day of people talking about something in relation to these games, right? Like, back then we didn't have online. You'd mingle like, oh my gosh, there's a secret in Adventure or this, and like, what are you talking about? And and you don't know what's true and what's false. And there was a lot of fun just talking with your friends and other folks about these games and what secrets they may hide. And so sometimes you miss that these days. As we've kind of gotten all separated, and especially when you're talking about these sort of classic game experiences. But having a little Easter egg thing and having people, I know when this comes out, discuss like what unlocks what and how you get this stuff is going to be kind of fun to see as they organically figure out what the solutions are and things like that. So I think that's pretty neat.
Are you going to speed run Adventure?
Well,
on mode 1?
I never played through Adventure until we started this project. So,
Really?
yeah.
Oh,
But that's the great thing. See, that's the goal. See,
Yeah.
that's the hope, right? Like the hope is that, Jer is more of an Atari fan than a lot of people. And there's a lot of people out there who are sort of casual Atari fans who played back in the day but haven't really followed Atari until maybe recently, or they're just, they see the logo in the mall, right, in a store in the mall. But we want to add the quality of life improvements. We want to present these in a way where it encourages people to actually go through and enjoy these experiences and really understand where the industry came from. And like I always say, there's a lot to learn from games like these. Back in the day, games were much more simplistic. There wasn't a lot of smoke and mirrors or fancy FMVs or high quality textures and things like that. You had to use your imagination, and the moment-to-moment gameplay had to be engaging. Otherwise, you would just move on. And so as a game developer and designer myself, I like to play these things and understand what made them so fun and unique back in the day, because you can learn a lot of that stuff and use it and expand upon it even in today's sort of game development environment, right?
I mean, this is my childhood. I was an Atari kid. I grew up in the arcades, and the 2600 was the greatest thing that I ever received for a holiday gift. And so, I spent many hours playing Adventure, and it's fun now knowing how to get through the later. There are 3 variations on Adventure that he just played. That was the easiest.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Oh yeah, I'd really like to diminish your accomplishment, but small kingdom, full kingdom, and full kingdom and random placement. This would be something that you would physically toggle with a switch on the Atari 2600 or the Atari VCS console, and that's how it would just say 1, 2, or 3 on the screen, and it will do that here. So if you're looking for a bigger challenge, honestly, Game 3 is like hardcore. Random placement means that the objects that you need to unlock the castle, the castles and find the chalice and bring the chalice back to your castle are all over the place. Plus there's random enemies. The enemies are notoriously annoying. This is a brilliant game, especially for its time. You may be amazed at how challenging it can be.
Adventure was obviously the game that was popular for having the first ever Easter egg, and that was popularized in Ready Player One. Did you know about the Easter egg back in the day? How did you first find out about that?
This was like a schoolyard rumor. My friends said, you can find out the guy's name who did it. And I don't know who came up with it, but we were all like, no, that's not true. But then we were all like, oh God, I hope it's true. So we all sort of worked together and shared information. No, you've got to find the secret dot. I'm like, what's a secret dot? Oh, well, there's this tiny little pixel and it's embedded in a wall and you have to put a bridge through a wall. And I'm like, this all sounds like nonsense. And, over the course of several weeks, people were like, I did it, I found it. I took a picture with my disc camera. I'll have proof in 2 weeks.
Oh, the disc camera.
That kind of stuff. I mean, that was, and so yeah, it was legendary.
That's great.
And yeah,
I would go
fantastic.
back in. Like, I just want to show for people. This is just an example of sort of what the 2600. Obviously for those who are not or even familiar, the 2600 had physical switches that you would flip in order to adjust the game modes that you were going into. And it's always kind of challenging in order to figure out a way to display that in a user friendly way. And so this is sort of the general interface that we utilize for the 2600 games, where we kind of go through and list here the different modes, and instead of manually forcing you to do the switches, you can go here and choose the mode itself. And then of course at the top there's the triggers which adjust things like the difficulty setting or the TV mode, which in some cases was used for other purposes than the sort of switching between black and white and quote-unquote color or TV mode scenario. Hopefully this comes across as more intuitive and friendly, and it's a little crazy because some of the games have like 50, 60
The
game
different
modes?
modes, yeah,
yeah.
a ton of them. I mean,
Yeah.
Asteroids has
Asteroids is
quite a few.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would definitely. I think a lot of people probably by default just think, well, I'm going to go in and play that game. You know,
Right.
jump into mode 1, whatever
Right.
that happens to be. But definitely come when you get to this screen, hit Y, and you will see so many options. And a lot of games actually default to a 2-player mode. Maybe not a lot, but a few of the games do.
Some.
And so you're going to want to come in here in order to turn on single player if that's what you have there. And plus, you can play with the left and right difficulty switches to do things that you probably have never seen before, even if you had a 2600, because these are so many options to explore.
Yeah, and it's like a great way of like you've gotten good. You started at the beginning, you've gotten really good, and you're like, okay, what's another challenge that I can add to it? Right? You go to another mode, and maybe something allows you to change something else out.
Yeah.
It makes it more challenging. So, Children's Vision, I don't even know what that was. That was weird. I haven't seen that one.
What's that?
Children's, if you scroll up, it's like it says Children's Vision.
Yeah,
Do you remember
see
what
that
was?
little bear in the bottom right of the
Yeah.
cover?
Yeah, yeah.
That symbol means it has children's mode.
It's-
and
it's
it's
a
an
super
easier
easy
mode.
mode, right?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Oh, right.
It was
yeah.
a thing many games had.
Yes, the bear shows up a lot.
I loved that Atari would say
Yes, the bear.
the bear.
66 video games meant 66 modes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was
It's
a great
marketing,
thing. Yeah, it was a
Dan, it's
great thing to
marketing.
put on the cover. Like, wow, look at the value you're getting. This is 66. You thought it was just asteroids? No.
Yeah,
We got
yeah.
66 modes,
Yeah,
but we'll call them games.
We have 103 games in the collection, but we thought about
Oh, including variations.
if you could
Oh, that would be so great.
It'd be so huge. That's for sure. But anyway, I wanted to like pause on that a little bit just to show people, because sometimes, especially for 2600 fans, they're like, well, how do you present this stuff? So this is inherently the interface for that.
Joshua 515-2001 says, are any of the 5 hidden games that need to be unlocked, do they happen to be rare games like Pepsi Invaders or Air Raid or Red Sea Crossing? All the games
Are
secret, but I will tell you that all the games are part of the Atari catalog. When we say Atari games, we mean games that were generally developed and or published by Atari themselves. One of the things that's been interesting to see how people interpret the term Atari game
Right.
is I played that game on an Atari console, so there's expectations that it's going to be there. But that's not the case. So all the games you just mentioned were third-party games that are not part of the Atari sort of library, the IP, if you will, if we can get nerdy about it. But you will recognize these games, and hopefully you will enjoy revisiting these games. But they're not going to be like, especially something like Pepsi Invaders, which yes is a rare promotional version of Space Invaders put out by Pepsi. Just the licensing there alone makes that kind of a non-starter for this. But let's talk about some of these. I'd really like to talk about the reimagined games.
Yeah.
For one, because Jeremy was directly involved in making at least one of these, if not helping with all of them.
All the engineers were.
Yeah.
Do you want to dive into one while we talk about it?
Let's do Vector Sector, because Dave's
Sure.
going to come down later, and I'd like to have Dave talk about. So Vector Sector is your love letter to Atari Vector games.
Indeed, yeah. Mike suggested, what if we, think about the reimagined games as collections of games that all exist in the same universe and they transition from one to the other. This ended up being the game that ran with that idea, and it imagines what if Asteroids and Lunar Lander and Tempest and some other games all existed in the same universe, and it was just a ton of fun to make. All of the vector graphics are real, as far as you can get on an LCD monitor. Vector graphics, everything is line art. There's a modeler that it was built into the game that you could draw graphics with. There's no sprites whatsoever. So,
And a great little tutorial here, which is awesome.
yeah, everyone else is making their instructional manuals, and I wanted to be an arcade game.
Right.
No,
It's you
It's
jump
got to
in-
be obvious, and it's got to be right in front of you.
Exactly.
And that's what I want to. That's great about these reimagined games is that everyone kind of approached it differently, right? Your love for the vector experience in the classic days of Atari arcade games kind of led to this, which is a very unique experience compared to the other reimagined games.
Yeah, and this is a twin stick shooter, so you considered what works now when you're trying to blend all these different games. Hit on twin stick.
I always imagined that Asteroids was the genre that evolved into twin stick. If you think about Geometry Wars as the evolution of Asteroids, it really became that. I mean, it's what made sense for the interface.
Right.
It's interfaces means so much to games, and we could talk about it later, but we spent a lot of time converting classic interfaces to gamepad because we wanted it to feel right. But I think natively, twin stick is perfect for gamepad.
You just did something that most new players can't do, which is land in Lunar Lander.
Yeah, well, apparently we took this game to California Extreme, and I had no idea. But I discovered some people had never even seen Lunar Lander. They wouldn't know what to do.
Exactly.
Lunar Lander came out in '79. That was the predecessor to Asteroids, to the point where the original Asteroids prototype was built on Lunar Lander hardware. So Lunar Lander, you have to remember that like the world was space crazy in the late '70s.
Right.
And it had a giant analog throttle, and the whole goal was to steer your ship so that you could safely land. And it required subtlety that I, as an 8-year-old, did not have.
I always appreciated the game as a simulator. You know?
Yeah, it really felt more like a simulator. You had a limited amount of fuel,
right?
Things like that.
I felt like I had access to some NASA technology or something.
Yeah.
Lunar Lander.
And it was very satisfying to use this giant like grip, this throttle. That was made of like solid metal,
right?
You know, but yeah, it's not a game that you see operating too much anymore. Asteroids was an enormous hit. They made more than 50,000 machines, so there's a much better chance that you would have seen, hey, you got an achievement. Way to go.
Unlocked. So we loop around, and now we have a different color scheme, and we are repeating the same loop now, but there might be a few more enemies that we encounter in Wave 2.
Yeah.
So we have the smaller UFO form, and now we have the Asteroids Deluxe enemy, which now
it's called the Killer Satellite, and I learned that during this project. Is that the segmented bad guy from Deluxe is called the Killer Satellite?
I saw it referred to as the Death Star, but I knew that couldn't be.
No, I think that's probably a fan
Right.
theory. That's fanon. But yeah, so Vector Sector is one of the 6 reimagined games in Atari 50. Atari 50, the anniversary celebration, comes out this time next week. You could be playing it November 11th.
Next Friday.
This is the first time we're showing this on Twitch. This is the world premiere stream, and it's all to benefit Extra Life. This is part of our Extra Life weekend. We'll be streaming all weekend, today, tomorrow, and Sunday, 10 to 10 Pacific each day. That's 1 to 1 PM to AM on the East Coast and wherever you may be in between. Please do use the donation link that you see there on the side of the gameplay. We're giving you this great insight from our own development team and a chance to see what we've got going on and why we're so proud of this title. But it is all to try to get some money for the kids. We are doing this for the Benioff Hospital here in oh, that's something I have never gotten. I guarantee I didn't know that it said perfect.
Oh, Dan.
And also, for those who are going to be tuning later, I see we have a variety of systems that people have hooked up. So we got a Super Nintendo, a Dreamcast, a GameCube, an N64, an original NES, and an Xbox, and things. So the variety of games and generations that are going to be streamed over the next few days is going to be pretty diverse.
Yeah, I know we're doing Eternal not Eternal Champions.
Really?
I would do Eternal Champions, but we're going to do Eternal Darkness tomorrow. We've got some Mischief Makers a little later on.
Yeah.
Some really good retro games that maybe you haven't seen or just, underappreciated.
You've heard about, but maybe
You've heard about,
haven't. Yeah.
And you're going to find people who are very, oh, look at that. You just spoiled a thing.
Hey, you still got to get
there. You go. Yeah, there's
Still gotta
4
do it.
games to go. Wow. But you do have to survive to Wave 3 and take out the guest enemies from Gravatar, and you will unlock Gravatar on the 2600. That's one of the secret games.
So for those of you on the stream, you have a leg up on
You can be
everybody
like,
else
oh, you
out in
guys
the
heard
world.
about Gravatar, right?
Yeah.
You know more than everybody else. Jeremy, you created actual technology to render not only this vector game, but the other vector games in the collection more accurately. And the player has control over the glow of how strong the vectors are so that they can sort of replicate what the machines were that they may have seen or, grew up. The one in the pizza place was very light or very dark. They can even simulate that. You're giving them that option?
Yeah, different monitors also are lighter or darker, so you need to have a brighter or lighter glow effect. This game is just sort of baked in to a particular setting, but yeah, all the arcade games use the same vector technology or drawing technology in order to emulate vectors as much as we can, with lots of flicker and glow and judder And this game uses a phosphor effect.
It's like you made this game.
You know,
there's a lot.
all through testing, I was the one saying it's too hard, and Jeremy's like doing everything he can not to tell me to get good.
Well, that's the problem, right? The more you play, see, that's the eternal challenge of creating games in general. Is that like you play it so much and you get good at it. Like, where's the point? Which is why you have to bring in people in order to play it, right?
I was definitely the low end of that totem pole. I was like, yeah, if you're looking for a really terrible player who loves these games but stinks, please accept my feedback for whatever good it does you.
Well, it turns out when you remake Tempest from scratch, you learn a lot about Tempest too. So I didn't even know when I started this project that you can shoot enemies if you're in the adjacent lane. You know, if they get out to the edge,
All right.
you can fire it with their right next to you, and that takes them out. Really useful skill.
Yeah, without getting hit by, attacked by
Uberus points out that we have some TTL games in here. So TTL is, I forget exactly what it stands for, transistor logic something. Basically, it's what were video games in the arcade before there were chips.
Microcontrollers.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is hand-wired, generally boards, point to point. All the components are it's just a different thing. You can't just dump the ROM from Pong. You can't do that with Breakout. So it has to be completely rebuilt from the original schematic. From you start simulating the individual elements on that board and say, what was this supposed to do? How can we make it behave accurately? And yes, we did. Our engineers went that extra mile and actually reassembled from TTL games, so you'll be able to play a very accurate version of Pong, a very accurate version of Breakout, in this collection, where you may not have seen it as accurate before. You've played Pong and you've played Breakout, and there have been other home conversions, but we really believe that we've gone one beyond with this, and you're going to get the most authentic experience in all of these games that we could possibly offer. We do, thank you. Transistor to Transistor Logic says Play History. Thank you. I was like, it's so I know transistor and logic, and what's the other word?
Right.
It's the word I've already said, so I appreciate that. Wow, you got the high score. We're all impressed.
Wait, I thought you were AAA.
Yeah.
Today I'll be XTR.
I thought you were going to be Vin Diesel. Yeah. Like you're just that hardcore. Do you want to show a little of the before you move on? Do you want to show a little of the two-player?
Yeah, who wants to
Get
play?
good.
Oh,
Get
God.
good.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say there's no controller in front of me. So Steven, why don't?
Okay.
And you might want to mention the tethered mode. What's the
Right.
tethered mode all about?
So you've seen all the games that the gameplay pays homage to, including some games that Atari does not own the rights to anymore, but we are very much a part of the history, and we wanted a way to fit them in. A game that they still do is what you always remember the title and I don't, not Space War.
Space Duel.
Space Duel. And it's another Owen Rubin game, just like Major Havoc. This is a game that's was going to be a follow-up to Asteroids Deluxe. And you can play that game in these 4 different modes. So you can play through the entire game of Vector Sector in any of these 4 modes as well, which was a particular challenge. The hardest one is, of course, linked. So let's try it.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, make them try it. Oh, you're doing it. Oh, never mind.
And now that I've reached wave 4, I can also start at wave 4 if I wanted to.
But please don't do that for here.
Oh,
so
God.
each player has their own
you practice
thruster.
your-
Each player has their own shield. But you are tethered together, so you have to work together.
Yeah, we can't shoot each other.
Thankfully, because you're supposed to shoot everything else. You are watching the world premiere stream of Atari 50, the anniversary celebration. This collection, this interactive documentary comes out, oh boy.
No,
You can't
even
get away
Shield
when-
won't save
Yeah,
me there.
direct.
This will be out November 11th. That's next Friday, a week from today. Please do hit our donation link if you like what you're seeing. We're
Go for the
thrilled
2X.
to be able to show you this
Yeah, I
for
guess so.
the first time on Twitch. And hopefully you'll see a lot more people streaming it next week on Twitch. This really takes a lot of coordination.
Oh my God, Steven. Have you?
Sorry.
Here we go. Here we go. You got it.
Very good.
It's a lot of pressure to do this
I
while
was going
streaming.
to say, I should point out that, yeah, this really is so much harder than it looks. But, it's important that we not only get, all of the details right and get all of the...
I'm not used to playing this 2-player.
We also wanted to put in a way to test your friendships, and that's what this mode really is.
Remember, your shield works in all 4 modes, all 4 game phases. So if you're gonna be hit that shield.
Yeah, the
Hit
shield
down.
button is very useful to me in this, the sort of
God.
planet
What is
run.
that? Oh, I didn't even see that I got, oh.
What happened indeed?
That
Wow.
was I'm sorry, that was a good run.
Yeah. well,
I've seen people play 2-player tethered before, and that was a good run. Nobody should feel bad about this.
That's your put your eyes.
I'm leaving now.
Bodecal says, I can't believe I saw that actually landed. Like, yeah, I'm glad that we have it on the stream now, because now people can point to it and go, no, it can be done, look. I do think that people will be surprised. Mike,
It is fun.
Mike J. Micah is in our chat room right now, by the way. He is our studio head president and our lead geek. And
Is it real Mike J. Micah?
it's the actual Michael J. Micah. There's a little blue check next to his name.
Oh, yeah.
And Mike, Mike may be able to answer some of your questions if I miss them because we're doing this live.
Oh, are we doing this?
That's single player.
Oh, you're fine. Okay.
Okay.
I can only take so much embarrassment.
But this is one of the 6 reimagined games that's in this collection. Imagine, like, we have this playground. We're working with Atari. We want to respect their legacy, but we also want to take it forward. So our engineers were basically set loose and said, what is your passion? What kind of new game would you like to add to the Atari catalog? And this is one of them. Because Jeremy loves him some vector games, he wanted to do a vector love letter.
Vector games are timeless, man. The graphics look good today if you play
Yeah.
Tempest. Tempest is an amazing looking game.
And this is the point that I want to bring up, and I kind of hinted at it a little bit earlier, is that, good or bad, our engineers kind of went off and had their own ability to kind of create whatever experience they wanted. And fortunately, they all have a sort of a different focus as far as Atari's history.
Absolutely.
So what ended up with is we have 6 very diverse.
Why would you do that?
6 very diverse game experiences that are spread out. So you have the vector stuff. You have Haunted Houses, which is sort of like this homage, right? Almost like a pseudo sequel in some ways to Haunted House. We have Yars, which is Mike's. Yars is one of Mike's all-time fave games, and so he took that, and while it's running the original game underneath, he did an amazing, awesome fresh coat of paint on it that you can flip off and on between the original and the new version on the fly. So that's a very sort of different interpretation of the original game.
You want to show?
We have Touch Me, which is the first time sort of like that this handheld has been probably revived and included in any sort of release beyond its original.
Jason Cirillo is a huge collector of handheld electronic games from the 70s, so this was the opportunity to do this. Touch Me started as an Atari arcade game in 1974, I believe.
Right, I think that's right.
Which then inspired Simon, which was a very popular toy of, Simon Says. And then, of course, Atari said, wait a minute, that's our idea. We can go back. And so they made a handheld version of Touch Me that incorporated some of the improvements, like the colors, from Simon.
Yeah, it's too bad that Simon got a lot of the glory for that. But we were glad that Jason was able to come in. I still love just the crispness of this. It's so clean looking, and does support touch controls as well for those
Switch.
platforms on Switch. And so that's what we also consider sort of a reimagined game. And then, we have Sword Quest, Air World, which we'll probably go into when Dave comes down.
Yeah, Dave, if you're watching, come on down.
And then Quadr Tank, which is sort of the
Mike J. Micah's game.
So Mike Micah's game, which is sort of like this celebration of tank meets combat a bit. The best parts of those sort of games.
Yes, I do have a contrler. We could do this. Do you want to do it?
Well, you guys, I can talk while you guys are playing. So I think that variety is what's going to be neat, because a lot of times in these releases, you get the previous games, but you don't necessarily get new content or new experiences. And this was a case where the team really loves Atari so much and is just huge fans that they wanted to sort of have that opportunity to do that. So I think that's a win-win sort of across the board. And I think when people jump into, do you want this?
Oh, it's the other.
Here.
It's the other one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I reach? I might be able to reach.
You should. Yeah.
Here.
Okay.
Yeah, the cables were all. There we go.
Sorry about that.
The cables were all organized for that.
But So you get those new experiences, and they're very diverse. And here, this is, I think, going to be sort of a sleeper hit in that this couch experience where you and your friends or you and your family are sitting down and you just wanted to have something simple and fun that's easy to get into, and anyone can play, but there's a variety of modes, and Quadr Tank is that, right? So like I said, it sort of harkens back to, you know, the sort of tank modes of combat, and then also the arcade game Tank itself, and I think a merging of those kind of two experiences.
I want to call out the controls here too, because there's several ways that you can do this, and Mike was very smart. He put 3 different control methods in the game. So if you tap a button, you can go between A, B, and C. A is like the old arcade game Battlezone, where both treads go forward or backward, and you
traditional
twist
tank
them.
controls.
Yeah,
really.
traditional tank controls. Mode B is much more like Atari 2600 combat. So you steer and turn all with the left joystick, and then you just fire with the with the button. And then 3
Help me out.
Oh, sorry, I'm coming.
Oh,
I'm
God.
coming. 3 is much more like a modern FPS. So you can rotate with the right stick and shoot. Oh man, how did he survive? And shoot and steer rather with the right analog stick. You move with left, and you can toggle between those on the fly. I don't recommend it. I'm gonna go get that flag. Oh,
And you can play with any number of AI players too, and it's actually really good. I've had some close matches with AI, which maybe I'm just really bad, but it's.
Oh, I can't shoot when I'm in the water. That makes
I've
sense.
been very impressed by his AI tanks.
Yeah, I actually set it up to get some screenshots one day with just 4 AI. So if you're looking for a betting scenario, you can totally just send the AI 4 tanks against each other. I will also
amusement only.
For amusement only. Okay, well, no betting. If there is also a straight combat mode, so it's just sort of like a traditional deathmatch. You can also restrict which weapons, so that everybody has rockets and lasers in one mode. There is also an ice field, and if you remember sort of classic Atari 2600 games like Race or Indy 500, as it was sometimes called. I think the Sears version was Race. That had an ice track, and it was always just hilarious because it was so crazy. Imagine this on ice, and it is absolutely hilarious. So this is the Thanksgiving game. Everybody around the house. Oh, come here! I've got a laser, buddy, and I want to share it with you. But I can't. I've switched controls so many times I forget. There you go.
Let's give a shout out to our musician Bob Baffy for a minute, because he is.
He's an unsung hero in a lot of ways.
I didn't want to say that because around here he's not.
No, he's not.
Publicly.
But he kind of works in the background, and he's not as front facing and stuff. But he really has an impact on almost every release that we've done over the past 5 or 6 years plus since I've been here. And he's contributed a lot to not only the sort of UI music and sound effects that you traditionally hear, but a lot of the music, whenever we do stuff like this, like the original games and stuff like that, he contributes quite a bit to the sound effects and music and just overall ambient kind of experience. So.
He did all the music, all the original music in Atari 58. So he did the menu music as well as the music for all of the games. And then he, of course, had the final pass on the sound effects, most of which he designed. I mean, 99% of which he designed from scratch, with an enormous attention to detail. And when I worked with him on Vector Sector, we had the idea to create different themes for each phase of the game, and the amount of iteration and passion that went into that was just so much fun. I mean, working with him has been a blast.
Yeah, he is. Bob, if you're watching this, thank you for all your hard work. And
I'm glad you called it out, because a lot of people only notice music or sound when it's bad. So it really is lovely to be able to. Oh my goodness, that computer 3 is really roughing me up. I can't get over there. Can you? C4 is up.
Well, he's got nowhere to bring it.
Oh my God! Look at how aggressive little blue dude is for me.
So is he going to come after me now? Yeah, he's going to come after me, even though he has the flag.
I'm coming to you. Oh. All
right, teamwork, Dan. Get it done.
Well, I'm trying.
Nice
there
work.
We go.
Touch that flag.
I will. I just have to. There. I should have taken Control C. Yeah. So this is, yeah, combat was actually based on an arcade game called Tank.
Tank 4,
and-
Tank 8, or was it just Tank?
Well, the original one was just Tank, but they did variations,
Yeah.
Tank 4 and Tank 8, with multiple players. But Tank also has an interesting part of history because it was published by not Atari, but Key Games, K-E-E. And that was born out of having a lot of people straight up steal Atari's arcade designs. And so they found that they could compete with themselves if they did it under like a boutique brand. So suddenly Atari would bring out a game and then Key would bring out a clone 2 months later. And they realized, hey, if you're going to clone the games, buy the clones from us. And that's part of how they managed to beat all the people that were making so many unlicensed Pong copies and things like that.
Can I just say this one tweet
absolutely.
I appreciate? Quote, I'm more excited for the Atari 50 release than I have been for any game released since the Link's Awakening remake.
Oh, Play History is correcting me. Key Games was to get around distributor exclusivity, not clones. Sorry. Thank you for the clarification. Yeah, is there an AI amusement only mode in Warlords? I have seen cache games of Warlords out in the wild, and man, they get brutal.
Speaking of Warlords, actually, because I only reminded because you're wearing the shirt, you should give a little context, even though it's peripherally related to this, as far as Star Lords and what that was all about.
Another Micah Bob Baffy collaboration. It was Star Lords was the arcade game that I'm sure big fans of Digital Eclipse remember from almost 4 years ago.
Right.
We made an arcade game associated with Tested, and we brought it to California Extreme, and we shot the whole documentary of the making of it, and it was an homage to this game. So it was what if you had a 6-player space-based Warlords, because space is cool.
Right.
And
That's a quote. That's the back of the box quote right there.
so we made a hexagonal arcade cabinet, and
It's beautiful. Like
It
it's
is
a beautiful
glorious.
cabinet.
loaded with LEDs, very unique shape, like something you'd never make more than one of.
Cup holders.
Yeah,
And it does have cup
You
holders.
can't forget
yeah.
the cup holders, man. That's like.
Do you guys want to play this with the paddle adapters? Since this is a paddle game,
Yeah, sure.
you can just
we can.
unplug and swap.
Can I just unplug?
Yeah, that's what I did. So analog controls are an important part of a lot of the arcade games. Pong was a paddle. Breakout was a paddle. Warlords is famously a paddle. And when we started thinking, particularly Micah, adamant that paddle games, analog games, should feel as accurate as humanly possible.
Oops.
So, did it?
Are you now player one?
I am.
It looked like you were moving the lower
Yeah,
left.
I think you're moving.
I'm not. Am I?
So the analog on the PlayStation 4 and 5 controllers, there is a touchpad. So we let you just move your finger back and forth to move the paddle. That's much more accurate.
Oh, yeah, it's bottom left.
And it's much cleaner. And on the Switch, there's a touch screen, so our engineers worked in touchscreen controls for that. On PC, there's a mouse, so a trackpad or a mouse, or some people have arcade controls at home as
we
well
go. Okay.
as a dial. So you can,
Do you wanna start this
you
over?
can use all that. But
I'm not in.
for Xbox gamers, it's a little trickier.
Let's.
So
let's
Mike
get out
Micah
real quick.
designed an adapter that you can 3D print. You need a skate bearing, a 608 skate bearing, very common, and not too expensive, like 10 for $8 on Amazon. And maybe about 15 minutes of 3D printing. It's actually not that long a 3D print on a modern printer. And you can put together this contraption that just clips on your Xbox controller so that you can then use a proper paddle controller. And again, it comes right, it's easy to remove, it's nothing permanent, but it really makes a big difference. Jason Cirillo, who worked on Neo Breakout, that's his baby. He's a big Breakout and Super Breakout fan particularly. So he got a chance to do his love letter to the Breakout series. And he immediately, when we got the prototypes and Mike had printed the first few and showed us, he was like, okay, hold on, I'm going in and I'm tweaking the code to make sure that it plays even better now that I have this option. So you can download the print files, the STL files. It's only 4 files. You can get them from Thingiverse. If you look for Digital Eclipse as one word, on Thingiverse you'll find ones for Xbox One controllers, Xbox Series controllers, so both S or X, the current modern version of the controller. It will work on the Elite controllers as well for both of those.
Oh, come on.
And the Switch. There is a sort of a prototype for the Switch. You don't necessarily need it because you can use the touchscreen on the Switch. But if you would prefer to have a classic paddle, and it feels very close to the 2600 paddle. I will say that that's not a mistake. Nice defense, by the way. You can get all those now, and you can print them and be ready for the release of this game on November 11th. Feel free to print it this weekend and get it going and get some skate bearings. If you have a fidget spinner and you haven't used it in, I don't know, 5 years, you can actually harvest the bearing out of most fidget spinners.
You can also get the bearings on Amazon.
Oh yeah, very cheap.
A tube of them, very cheap, probably delivered tomorrow.
Yeah.
And obviously we welcome if anyone out there with experience has any desire to improve the design, we certainly welcome it.
Yeah, well, our design, Mike's design, is based on a remix, so it's like a the 3D printing community is very collaborative and all about sharing.
You will notice that the Creative Commons license on ours is attribution but share alike. Like you should continue passing it on. If you even want to print them commercially, Mike's like, that's fine. Like if you want to pay somebody $5 to print you a paddle controller, he just wants you to have the paddle controller.
Yeah, totally.
It
really makes a big difference in all the paddle games, like the 2600 catalog as well as the breakouts. And Warlords, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. I'm gonna go through. I really appreciate that Play History is sort of adding in extra context and correcting me when I am goofing and misremembering things. But I want to see if there's any other questions I can answer. Otherwise, I did recently share the link to our the one that you see there on the screen, to our fundraising site. We have several people who will be streaming over the next 3 days. We're doing 12 hours a day for the next 3 days to raise money for the Extra Life charity. Tomorrow is technically the kickoff for most people who are taking part in the event. We decided, let's go crazy and let's go for 3 days. Ian Sherman really heading up a lot of this. Yeah, he is our hero for this, and he will be doing the bulk of the streaming here with friends as we stop by and try to keep him from going crazy from streaming for 12 hours a day. But if you have a couple of extra bucks, $1, $5, anything helps. We do want to raise as much money as we can. I'd like to thank some of my friends because I sent out the call yesterday, so my goal has been met, and I really appreciate that people did that. Blee, who was in the chat a little bit earlier, Blee was one of the people, first person to give me $10. Super appreciate that. Thank you so much. You could be next that we thank, and we would love it if you could help support this great charity that Extra Life does every year.
Just quick.
Huh? We're over 900? Oh, hey, and I just saw it go up in real time. 970,
thank you,
so thank you. We started the stream, I think, just above 500, so we have actually gotten some stuff. Thank you all so much. Click there and you can see who it was that gets the credit for it.
Just real briefly on the subject of input, in addition to the paddle controllers, if you don't have a 3D printer, maybe you don't have access to that, you can't print something, there is another option. It's not a cheap option, but the Atari controller.
I meant to bring one down.
Atari themselves sells a classic VCS wireless controller, and it looks like a 2600 joystick. It makes the 2600 joystick games play phenomenally, but it also acts as a dial, as a paddle. So the stalk on it rotates infinitely, so it does work with Tempest as well, and it's a great plug-and-play way to play all the paddle and dial games and joystick games, obviously, or 2600 joystick games on PC.
On PC, yeah.
As well as VCS.
The Atari VCS obviously supports that peripheral, but if you're a PC player, there's a video on our Twitter, which is twitter.com/digitaleclipse, showing how that works. I actually fired it up and played with the wireless controller, the Atari wireless controller, and played the arcade version of Tempest. And a couple people busted me for having it reversed.
Yeah, it's a setting.
It's a setting. You can do it either way. I did not find that to be, I didn't even notice because I was just like, it's very responsive. A couple of people have asked, why isn't that supported on Switch? Why isn't that supported on PS4? Because that controller is simply not officially supported on those platforms. But since we could do it on PC, we did it on PC. And so hopefully, that is a really good plug and play. I think the controller is $60. You might find a sale. Thank you. This is what it looks like. So it is the classic sort of Atari. Here, why don't you hold it because you're in the center. The classic Atari, 2600 single joystick, except there's more than one joystick. There's an additional button on the side
right.
which is really great. There's also sort of a start and a back button, and then the Atari logo is the Bluetooth wireless. You can also run it wired. I was running it wired in the video.
Some LEDs around it, around the
there's LEDs
perimeter.
to let
but
you know.
really, this I think the killer app is this.
Yes.
This spinning top. It makes Tempest. It's probably the best way to play Tempest in Atari 50 if you happen to have one.
It was, yeah. I mean, I've got some arcade controls that I've built at home, and I got like a big metal spinner, and that was a big deal for me. And now I'm like, well, this is sort of like the easy way to do it on other computers that I own that aren't my dedicated arcade space.
So I just wanted for those who are unsure or unaware, I wanted to kind of go through all the platforms that are included in this release. Obviously, the first thing front and center are the reimagined games, this new games that we talked about, and then we start getting into the arcade experiences, obviously, which was sort of the very beginning, early days of Atari. And we're over $1,000.
Oh,
thank you
hot
so
diggity.
much, everyone. Appreciate your support. Thank you. That's awesome. That's awesome. So we have the Atari, the arcade games, and then we jump, of course, to the 2600, which is obviously the bulk of this collection as far as the number of games. Then we hit the 5200. We have the 7800. We have Lynx games. One of the first times that the Lynx has really been a part of any sort of release. I know Evercade has some Lynx cartridges out there, so that's very cool as well. But as far as releasing Lynx games on normal modern consoles, this is one of the first times. And then we have the 800 series, and then we have the Jaguar, which is going to be, I think, the one that a lot of people are going to just instantly jump to. The Jaguar, of course, being Atari's last foray into home console, really outside of like the flashback systems that you can buy these days. But the Jaguar was, it's a hit or miss sort of scenario of people who love it, people who like don't understand it or don't like it. But there's a lot of actually intriguing titles and a surprising amount of genre diversity in the Jaguar library. And I think we tried to get some of that here. So you've got Atari Karts, which is obviously your kart racing game. Club Drive, which was this very early on kind of true 3D, open, almost like open world, if you could say that, driving situation that you can go through and you have sort of missions. There's actually a fun two-player component in it where you're trying to go around and get these objects as fast as you can, and whoever gets to them wins. So it even has some very cool components to that, and actually in the early days of 3D, it's pretty cool for that. Cybermorph, of course, for most people, this is a game that if you remotely know the Jaguar, you probably know this game. It was a pack-in for a while, and it was the game that probably was the most played on the Jaguar. Evolution Dino Dudes. It's funny because like this game, I'm reminded a little bit of like Lost Vikings, which we worked on the Blizzard Arcade collection. Sort of a similar context where you're controlling different characters and you're moving around, a little Lemmings-esque as well. But I kind of equate it to like if you like Lost Vikings, then you'll probably like Dino Dudes. And then Fight for Life, of course, this is the era of Virtua Fighter and the transition of fighting games over from 2D to 3D, early 3D. Fight for Life was one of those, was Atari's sort of approach to that. And kind of an interesting game. I mean, very much sort of early Virtua Fighter-esque, really, if you had to compare it to anything, with a little bit of Tekken thrown in. But I think I equate it more so to like early, Virtua Fighter. And then Missile Command 3D, which actually was a game that supported the never-released Jaguar virtual, reality headset. And there's actually a mode in here that you can trigger that is the VR mode, quote-unquote VR mode for the game. And there's actually a logo for the company that boots up to kind of hint at that. So people brought up a good point about this, like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to try to get this working for like PlayStation VR or something like that.
Well,
so,
and Rich Whitehouse, who made this emulator from scratch for this project, has in the past made,
the Sega stuff.
VR, emulated old VR hardware, and he's expressed a personal interest in his free time of looking into that. So, fingers crossed.
I don't know, maybe, like I said, maybe it'll be a dream at some point down the road we can do a update to this that actually supports PS4. That'd be kind of cool. And then Ruiner Pinball. I know Jer is a huge pinball fan, but he's more of a traditional real pinball fan, not necessarily.
I'm a pinball snob and proud of
the
it.
interpretation.
I play digital pinball all the time because it's all I have.
But I kind of like the fact that even though the Jaguar library was not huge, like I can't remember, like 40, 50 games, that they still had, I think, 2 pinball games in that library. But Ruiner Pinball is the one that we're able to include, and I think it's actually kind of fun. The table diversity is kind of cool, and there's a nice variety to it. So
Kids to adults rating, the testers never got to the later stages.
No.
yeah,
But it is the Jag game that supports 4 players in this collection,
right,
which is pretty cool.
Right. So pinball, and then of course the game that I think is synonymous with the Jaguar, and everyone who's remotely knows the Jaguar knows Minter's sort of Tempest 2000. It's like the de facto game that everyone wants. Like if you were to emulate a Jaguar system, you have to have Tempest 2000 on it, right? It's the must-have. So we got that, and of course we wanted to have a shooter of a game, and Trevor McFur is the one that a lot of people remember from the Jaguar. Your classic sort of 2D side-scrolling shooter. So those are our Jaguar games. So even in this sort of broad kind of base of games that we have here, it's nice to have that diversity.
Yeah, there's a little bit of everything in here for what was going on in the 90s at the time. Like every major genre is kind of represented.
Exactly. And people bring up a lot in the questions like, how did you handle the Jaguar controller? Because obviously it has a lot of buttons. It has
Where's Dave?
front. Yeah, exactly. It has a front-facing pad that has numerical digits on it, and you generally use those to do things like switch camera views, activate certain components, aspects of the game, even turn off music and things like that.
It basically has a full numpad on it. There's a ton of buttons on it.
Right. And so when we were approaching that, Dave came up with a pretty cool idea of a radial kind of approach to it, where you can just use the thumbstick and kind of select what you want to do in relation to that. So that's we'll be sure to show that off when Dave is down here, and he can sort of talk about it a little bit more.
I just asked Dave to come on down, please, because I want to talk about Haunted Houses, which is one of the new reimagined games, and Dave's really the guiding light behind that.
I'm glad you paused here.
Yes, I did deliberately.
I want to talk about these guys real quick. It's like I'm proud of this product from many standpoints, but I'm especially proud of bringing you to the universe here, because a lot of people have never played this amazing game that was made for the Atari 800 in 2007 by, as many people are aware, the demo scene has been, to this day, finding new ways to exploit old hardware, whether it's C64 or old Apple products or the Atari 800. And this is a game that utilizes demo technology in order to create a cool effect that you can, that becomes a game. But the gameplay is so simple and so good, and synced to the music in a way that is very demo scene-ish. I think people are going to like it. I wouldn't be surprised if people come away from this whole experience of the Atari 800 or Atari 50, have 103 games. There's a few people, this is going to be their favorite.
Yeah, and I give kudos to Jared, because he really initiated sort of the reaching out to the team who did this, and really wanted to have it as part of this sort of celebration. I'm glad that he did, because it is a great addition. Those guys were really great to work with. They really loved the idea of including it in this, and I'm glad that we are in the end able to actually get it to happen, because it is a great game, and I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by how fun it is.
I had no knowledge of this before the collection, before we started working on it, and I booted it up and I was like, what is this magic? Like, I never had an Atari home computer, so I missed all of those things until an opportunity like this came along. And yeah, this seems so advanced, and I never would have guessed that it was even out there.
Where did Dave go? He was just here.
That's the magic of Dave. He just disappears.
Did he just go away?
Dave's not here, man.
He was just here. He was just here.
Water.
Oh, he's getting water? Okay.
Oh, okay.
I can swap out with him, or it's up to you. If you want to stay, you sure?
Oh, I mean,
if you want to stay and talk
okay,
with him, I'm
sure.
totally fine. I mean, I've got a lot of streaming in the hours ahead.
I was going to
so-
say,
that's
Chris,
true.
do you want to jump in for Steven?
Well, one or the other. I mean,
Well, both.
or
You can
Dave
both-
can come.
Well,
Well,
if one person's jumping in, it's better for two people to jump
Right.
in. You know,
Sounds good.
cause the
I'll
chaos.
stay here.
okay.
Thanks, Dan.
All
Hey,
right.
that's fine.
Goodbye,
Hey,
everybody. Thank you for the donations. Keep it up. We'll see you for the next 3 days.
Yeah, I'll try to drag Jeremy back in later for some other stuff if he's still around. So thanks, guys. I will be back on a little bit later today, and I will see you soon, but I'll leave you in the good hands of these guys. Thank you.
Yeah. Stephen Frost, our head of production, and Jeremy Williams, one of our engineers here at Digital Eclipse. You're watching our beginning. This is the very first time that we're seeing Atari 50 streamed on Twitch. We have the world premiere as part of our Extra Life Marathon. We are doing this to raise money. You can see that we've already raised $1,000, and thank you very much for that. But we're going to be rotating a lot of different developers over the next 3 days. We're streaming 12 hours every day for the next 3 days. We'll start with Atari 50. A little bit later today, we're going to play some Garbage Pail Kids, which was a title that we worked on with Retrotainment and I Am 8-Bit. So that's coming up. Coming in now is Dave Rees, one of our other engineers here at Digital Eclipse, and our editorial director, Chris Kohler, who, if you know anything about classic games, or if you've ever been to any game show ever, you've probably seen Chris. He's also the author of multiple books, including Power Up, which I still have not gotten Chris to sign. But I should do that because I have an original printing. I have an old, was it Brady or Prima that did that for you?
It was Brady.
It was Brady, okay.
It was Brady. And it was
That's a
used to be
lovely
worth a lot of
T-shirt.
money. Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Just coincidentally happening to that's my just another high-strung prima donna from Atari T-shirt.
Yeah. So this is a little in-joke that bears explaining. That's actually in the product. So whoever wants to drive, you can go to the.
Am I driving?
You are driving. Oh, there's Chris's mic.
Okay.
Hello. So
No.
that's Chris Kohler. He is our editorial director. This is Dave Rees, one of our engineers, and he's sort of the main person behind Haunted Houses. So I want to talk about that. But you also did a lot of the controls, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All the systems, the input systems underneath across all the different emulators.
So no small problems, only big solutions.
Yeah, lots of big problems.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. Yeah. Go.
No, that's okay. I just so this T-shirt. This was one of my favorite stories from Atari history, and I'm thrilled that we got the chance to tell it as part of the interactive timeline. But the CEO who had come in after Nolan Bushnell, Ray Kassar, he came in when Warner acquired Atari in the late '70s, and he had. He often was very harsh in his criticism. He came from the textile industry, and at one point he said that Atari designers were nothing more than towel designers. Like, he felt that they were very disposable. And a hot mic caught him. He claimed it was off the record, but it wound up on the front page of the San Jose Mercury News, the big Silicon Valley newspaper, that he said, yeah, you know, like Atari's full of a bunch of high-strung prima donnas. That's what these designers are. That's what these programmers are. And of course, the staff took umbrage.
Which is great, because when there's literally like 100 people in the world potentially who can like design video games.
Right.
There's no such thing as a video game designer at this point. It's this very small group of people. What you definitely want to do as an executive is go out and just insult them all
Right.
in a very, very public setting, the people who are actually making the games for you. So they did not exactly take that well, and they made up these shirts that say just another high-strung prima donna from Atari, and they wore them, all on one day to essentially send a message that, yeah, we read the newspaper, Ray, and we hear what you're saying about us. There's been a lot of water under the bridge, and so for Atari 50, the anniversary celebration, we really wanted to present, instances like this that were indicative of conflicts at Atari, and there were things that changed the video game industry and that created. Things came out of conflicts, and there were stories that were negative type stories that are very important to the history, and so we wanted to have the shirt in there. And then when we started thinking about what kind of merch we wanted to make for Atari 50, we absolutely wanted to do a recreation, because these shirts, some of the Atari designers still have them, but there's not that many of them out there. You would see them at like classic gaming expos and things like that in the museum displays talking about the shirt. So we wanted to have it in our interactive timelines, and we also wanted to make some for ourselves. We sold some at Portland Retro Gaming Expo.
We did.
Also, yeah.
It also perfectly describes us.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I wanted it to be just another high-strung prima donna from Digital Eclipse.
We considered doing that.
The funny thing is, these shirts that we made, it's all come full circle because these are actually now officially licensed Atari merchandise.
Yes. So one of the great parts, we got to speak to many people who worked and lived at Atari, and they all have just amazing things to say, that it was a culture like they had never seen before. But through, we didn't want to make the reproduction of this T-shirt or even a tribute to it without the permission of the people that came up with it. And the designer was a woman named Carlina Ott. And so through social media, the magic of that, we were able to find Carlina, ask for her permission, work out a deal so that we could make a reproduction. But one of the first things that I said was, this was really sort of like a big middle finger to management at the time. This was an act of rebellion. And she actually told me that they went back and did 3 runs of it because it was so popular. Ultimately, Ray did get one himself. But I said, are you okay with this having like the official Atari logo on it after all these years? She goes, actually, to me, that makes it better. She says, I love that it's now officially part of Atari history, and that it, at the time, it was just a snarky commentary back to management. But she was the primary architect. The back, which you can't see because Chris is sitting down, has an opera singer, where the term prima donna generally comes from, and she's holding a spear. She's got a Viking helmet. She's holding a spear with a Fuji on it. So we even Norm Badillo, our art god here, actually went through and traced the original art, because we didn't have access to the original art. He went ahead and reproduced that as well. So yeah, a fun little thing that we got to do. That was our team T-shirt, and if you were at Portland, you had the chance to buy them. There are not many in existence, I can tell you that. And we also, this was a nice way to say thank you to people like Howard Scott Warshaw and David Crane and Mike Albaugh and Owen Rubin, who we interviewed as part of this. Anybody that gave us their time, we gave them a T-shirt. That was the very least we could do, in addition to eternal thanks. So hey, you're watching the beginning, the world premiere live stream of Atari 50, the anniversary celebration. This collection will be out next week. It's really more of an interactive documentary. It's not, as you can see, we've got a full historical timeline that traces the entire history of Atari, and then we use the games in the collection, more than 100 games, to illustrate sort of what Atari was thinking, what Atari's impact was at the time, and why Atari did the things that it did. Some of those things were good, some of those things were mistakes. It's kind of all out there. And fun little things like this. There was a magazine called Atari Age, and knowing that there are left-handed gamers who prefer to use the stick with their left hand and fire with their right, the standard Atari joystick was really built for right-handers. So here's what you have to do to open it up and change the pins. And change the connections inside your Atari joystick.
You don't even need to do any soldering. It literally says you can just pull them off.
Slide the pins off and stick them back on.
This was literally how you made a left-handed joystick back in the day. Atari. This is an official Atari magazine, and it's like, open up your controller, rewire it, go nuts.
Yeah.
We also rescanned all of these things, so as you can see, it's all in sort of gorgeous, extremely
Super
high
res,
resolution.
Yeah, all of the printed materials, all of the games have their original instruction manuals. Some of the games that had additional things, like Yar's Revenge comes with a comic book. The Sword Quest games came with comic books. They were very important parts of learning to play and being able to solve the puzzles of those games. Those are all reproduced. We scanned them in ourselves. We did not just grab stuff off the internet. Norm Badillo did a hero's job with his art team, rebuilding these assets from scratch, from those scans, cleaning them up, making them look better than they have ever looked since they were original. Plus, Norm built new manuals for the new games, the reimagined games that are exclusive to this. And yeah, there was just the scope of all of the printed materials that had to be scanned in and made to look beautiful again was unbelievable. It was months. We have flatbed scanners here, and that was... as one of the content editors, I work under Chris, and several weeks of my work on this thing was just scanning in manuals at super high resolution so that Norm and his team could then pick it up and you can see the results
and
right here.
And cleaning up hundreds and hundreds of pages and color corrections and everything to make these look better than they ever have in any. I mean, there's been other Atari collections that have had manual scans, but it's
Yeah.
like you look and it's like rusty staples and stuff like that, and it's like
Norm
I'd
busted me
say-
for some of that too.
I'd say like my experience playing previous collections from other developers, it's very frustrating because you typically have to back out of the game to view the manual. So
Right.
you sort of lose the moment, right? So we have them accessible while you're still playing the game, so you don't necessarily have to leave the game. You just have to jump to the pause menu and open it up, and then you can jump back to the game. So it's a much smoother experience.
It's
I
what
don't
you
know
would
if
do.
I don't know if Howard talks about this, and I know we talked about this. I don't know if it made it into one of the videos, but he was the first party Atari game designer to actually get credit for one of his games, because he actually wrote this or he didn't write the comic, but he came up with this story for the Yars comic, and they were like, oh well, we're gonna do credits in the comic, and so he's like, great, credit me as the cartridge programmer. And so this is the first time Atari ever credited one of its designers by name.
Yeah.
Prior to this, they were all just simply anonymous.
Yeah, except for the folks that had snuck in Easter eggs,
Of course.
and tried to find ways around management to do it. But yeah, that did not actually make it into the interviews. We wound up with, we spoke to each of the people that we got to interview for probably 2 hours. I mean, Drew Scanlon was running the cameras on that and knows all the stuff. But even edited down, we were able to get more than an hour's worth of interviews. As part of this collection, all fully edited. You can see Tim Schafer there. We have a video about the impact of adventure, not just, you get to play the game, you get to see the original stuff, and we tell you the story, but this is particularly something that inspired the next generation of game developers. And so that's sort of the stuff that you'll find in here that you won't find anywhere else.
Yeah, and there's so much more that we could have done this for every game. You know what I mean? There's so many things. People could have talked about the influence of so many games. We ended up talking about, we did a video on adventure. We did a video on Star Raiders as well. These things that really, here, if you look at the box upside down.
Just like I did
mean,
when I
that's
was a kid.
That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, exactly.
I don't understand any of this.
You can look at the
Wait,
bottom.
so what is the price?
Yeah, there's a price
there a
list
price?
on the back there
Yeah.
for, I think it's for repairs.
Oh,
and-
sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do not- yeah,
if
don't
you
call
need
me
to
numbers
repair,
anymore.
it's going to be $5 to repair your joystick,
Yep.
and $10 to repair paddle controllers because they're more difficult. I actually I used my 2600. I had the Sears Telegames version, but I used it so much. Mine needed service when I was a kid, and I thought like that was amazing. There must be some wizard somewhere that can open up a 2600 and go inside the VCS to repair it. And yeah, my dad was like, "Man, $40." I'm like, "Hey, it's either that or you buy me a new one, please." How many papers do I have to deliver? So yeah, you're going to find a whole bunch of interesting things. You're also going to see, like when you were showing Yars, you were showing some of the artwork and things like that, promotional artwork and other things like that. We worked with Tim Lapatino, who helped us source a lot of that stuff. You may know him from the Art of Atari book. And he helped us get in touch with the artists and make sure that we had permission to use their stuff. But being able to see all of these assets in super high res, obviously Chris is zooming in. And like this was at a time when this was the most important thing, because the graphics being so basic and so primordial, how do you get players excited to want to jump in and play sports games? You show them what they're supposed to be seeing in their imagination. It really helps set the table, if you will.
Yeah, it reminds me of, you'd go to the toy store, right? And you just see a wall of game box art.
Right.
And that is how you bought a game. It was like,
That one,
looks
the
cool.
painting looks
Yeah,
awesome on that one.
exactly.
I'll do it. Yeah.
And when we can, we're making sure to credit the artists. I mean, this is by Hiro Kimura, and his stuff is amazing. When you find his stuff in this collection, he was really fantastic.
How many things did you all find that didn't make the cut? Asks Jesse Cherry. A ton.
This is like a small sliver, because what we ended up having to do was just say, what are the stories that we're trying to tell?
Yeah.
And what artifacts do we need? With a museum, when you go into a museum and you start looking at the display cases in the museum, you are looking at a tiny fraction of what that museum has in its holdings. And they're pulling out certain artifacts to show you so they can tell a story. And that's essentially what we had to do here as well. Not only for it would just become completely unreadable if we put in absolutely everything that we had access to, but also just because we cleaned up all of these assets as well, and we made these 3D boxes, and it's like, this box was not this mint when we scanned this in.
That's true.
So there was
A lot of them were
tons.
damaged, had price tags on them, and
so much
Well,
time.
the Earthworld comic book that we scanned was the one that I still have from when I was a kid. And Norm was like, "What did
It
you
was
do to this
pristine.
thing?"
No.
it was in really bad shape. And he's like, "What did you do? Like, what? Didn't you take care of this?" I was like, "I was 12. What did I know?"
Right.
You know. But yeah, he busted. He's like, "Wow, did you put coffee on this? Like, I see rings." I'm like, "Probably,
12?
yeah, probably there was like orange juice or something that, who knows?" But it all looks much better now. Play History wants to know if that is an authentic prima donna shirt, and I feel like we just told this story. Sorry if you missed it, but yes and no, it is an official reproduction of the original shirt, and the original shirt story is told within Atari 50's narrative timelines.
Yep.
You brought up that, what was the story we wanted to tell? We got some amazing stories that did not make it in from people's interviews or from research that we had done, even some things that we found out later. But the point of this project was to tell the authoritative history of Atari. And if we're telling that story, what games support being able to tell that? What assets do we need that do that? Chris is our editorial director, and I came on to the company in February, right when things started to get underway on this. Like, there were programming had been done, and the interface was already in a beta state. But to actually start filling in what is the content going to look like, I'm thrilled that I got to help right away with that. And Chris said, consider walking through a physical museum. You've got the glass cases. You can look at them in any order if you want to. But there's a little card, there's a little placard that explains the importance of what it is that you're looking for and what the context is. Their collection at the museum is probably way more. If it's a military thing, they're going to have a ton of uniforms, but they're only going to show 3 or 4 because they're the most representative of the story they're trying to tell. That's your job. And that really helped me focus. So that's why if you say, "Oh, why isn't this game in it?" or "How come you didn't do this one?" We had a story to tell, and we needed to support that story. And that's really what we want people to take away is sorry, it's educational. I love
this guy.
dumb photo. Please notice
incredible.
that there is a Lynx redesign on top of the World Book Encyclopedia up on the top shelf.
It's got the Sunnyvale license plate holder.
Yeah, a famous, on Auto Row, Filore is one of the big ones down there. But yeah, just so many little 90s touches, and he couldn't be happier.
he's not looking at the TV, is he?
Wow! No, he's looking at his bowling trophies or something, isn't he?
No.
I can't believe I'm playing Cybermorph. This is where I learned to fly.
Right. Yeah. That's what she's saying. Where did you learn to fly? And he's
Yeah.
like, nowhere.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
Yep.
So yeah, that's if you're wondering why some of the editorial decisions were made, you can blame Chris because it was part of a larger narrative that we wanted to tell and put it all in context.
Sometimes we want to tell a cool story. Sometimes we find a picture like this and we can't not put it in.
Oh yeah, no, like some things were just too juicy. There's a number of Lynx ads. And what I found really interesting was, you scan in a lot of these classic ads and press materials and things like that, and the ads wind up telling the story of Lynx's struggle against other handhelds at the time. It was really good hardware, and it was 16-bit, it was color, and yet it had trouble finding its footing in the market. So what you see is like, Lynx marked down again.
Yeah.
Lynx drops price again. Lynx is redesigned to be a sexier unit. This Lynx version 2 that you're seeing here, smaller, a little bit more compact. Sam Trammell really wanted, he believed in Lynx and he gave a lot of company resources to it. So that story is represented here. You might not know
and
that
again, we
just
make
looking
sure,
at a Lynx.
we're tagging everything we're not sort of lumping everything together as the Atari Lynx. It's like, oh, the Atari Lynx came out in '89. Okay, well, 2 years later, that's when you have this redesign, and then 1993 is when, the price drops. When you put it all, and also, this is the 1990s, it's not Lynx Jaguar, so it's like, oh, look at this, Fatal Run for the Atari 2600, like, that's interesting. This was one of the final official Atari 2600 games that was released, and it came out in 1990, literally after the Atari Lynx
Genesis
was already on the market, after the Genesis was out. Right. What had happened was, video games came roaring back, right, with the Nintendo Entertainment System and everything after the crash, and Atari was like, gee, why did we get out of this? And the 2600 just continued to be something viable that Atari could put on shelves. The 2600 Junior, it was $50, and they were probably making money off of that. And it's like it was absolutely. This was part of the market. Like when I went into video game stores in the 1990s, you could still buy the Atari 2600. It was still something that you could actually purchase that was like a small part of the market, but it was still there. And so by putting Fatal Run, I mean, this was another example of a game where we brought it up and it was like, well, that game, is it good? Is it good? Is it popular? Is it something it needs to be? It's like, it needs to be in here because of the historical, and we even say like, it was 16 times the size of Combat. You know,
right.
If you look at this game, and it's like you get to, and again, it wouldn't really serve you the player if we just sort of gave you a list and it was like, here's here's E.T. and here not E.T.'s not in this, but you know, it's like here's Fatal Run and it's just like right next to Pong or it's right next to Combat or something like that. And it's like, here's the 2600 games, because
right.
like this, by the time they were making Fatal Run, like they were adding in so much extra stuff into that cartridge essentially, and they had so many tricks. It didn't even, you wouldn't even think, you look at Combat versus Fatal Run, the
yeah.
bookends of the 2600 library, and it looks like two different game platforms.
Yeah, it's not, it's amazing how far it had come.
Also, it literally has password saves.
Oh yeah, it's one of, yeah, that's fantastic.
Did I just...
I don't know.
Oh, look at that. There's a scrolling password on the bottom. I was like, oh, great. Thanks for putting in.
I mean, it's still a 2600 game, but that looks so unlike any of the original launch titles.
Right.
You know, like,
and
it's,
the things,
it's pretty
if you were
crazy.
if you were to show this to, you know, if you take this back to the 70s and like show like David Crane, you know, this or something like that, he would be like, what do you?
You can't do that on the hardware. Yeah, you can't.
There's a million things here that you quote unquote can't do. And the thing is, it's not, and I say they're adding hardware, it's like they're actually not, they're adding more ROM storage.
Right.
But they're not actually it's not like there's an extra chip or anything like this, like a Super FX chip or whatever. All of this stuff is just all the different tricks that designers learned along the way to be able to pull this all off. It's all just software tricks, but it's aided, and we talk about this in the timelines. It is aided by the fact that the Atari 2600 is unlike every other video game system because, to put it simply, it does not have a frame buffer. Every other game system, basically, it renders the whole image and then it puts out that frame on the TV, and then you get frames. That is not what the 2600 does. It's actually constantly redrawing the screen from the top down. So basically, like, for example, you know, first it's drawing the score, and then it's leaving the score on the screen, and it's not drawing the score anymore. Now it's drawing the desert and the cactus and stuff like that, and it's dealing with all of that in programming. Then it forgets all about that. It forgets all about the score. It forgets all about the desert, it's no longer rendering it. Now it's rendering the track in the car, and then it moves down to the odometer and the gauges on the bottom, right? And it's not rendering those anymore, but it knows that because of the raster gun on the television, all that stuff is going to stay in your. It's going to stay in your field of view essentially. So it can forget about it, and it just leaves it up there on the TV, although the computer isn't even thinking about that anymore. And so they know that they can do that, and so they use all of these tricks to be able to. And you can always tell with a 2600 game, like, things are very cleanly divided out into sort of vertical slices that are all sort of operating independently of each other. And so that's, again, that's why this is possible. But it's like we wanted to make sure to put this in that context so that when you jump in, this was a toff manual to find.
Yes, it was. This was one of your white whales.
Actually, funny behind the scenes story is that we went onto eBay and we bought a copy of this game, and it was like, oh, the box is crushed, but it's sealed. So we get the sealed copy in, and we pop the shrink wrap on it, and I look inside, and it's all water damaged. And the cartridge is stuck to the manual, and the manual's all stuck together.
Right.
So I ended up writing back to the seller who had a bunch of them, and I'm like, I will take an opened copy, but please verify that it's actually all good in there.
Right.
Yeah.
For our uses, we have different things.
So Dave's here.
Yeah, I want to jump into to Dave.
Yep.
I wanted to make one point.
Yeah.
You know, the 2600, like a pixel isn't a pixel. on the 2600.
It's a line, right?
It's a bar, and it's how much time it takes for that line to travel horizontally.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so each line that is drawn, there's a certain amount of time that this beam of light goes from one point to another, and 60 times a second, that is a pixel. So the programmers that made these games had to understand that timing, especially later on when games became more advanced and they were doing more tricks and colors, adding more colors, etc. They had to understand where that beam was. And there's a concept called racing the beam, where they knew exactly where the beam was, so they could know what they're going to draw next when that beam hit the next position inside of the frame rate, right? So what they had to do, they had to be incredibly creative designers and programmers to come up with the tricks. And I just want to
we do have some interviews with folks who did this programming in the collection. You'll see there's one video just called "Programming the VCS is Hard," and they explain some of what Dave's talking about. And then we also have a 2600 homebrew video towards the end of the project, which has people that do it for fun now, like people like Tim Schafer and Ed Fries, who have created homemade arcade 2600 games because of the challenge that they wanted to race the beam. So you will get some more insight into what it is to make one of these games. But what I really want to do is I want to talk to you about either Sword Quest and or Haunted House, because we only have about a half an hour left in the stream.
Okay.
What do you want to talk about first? Because those are the two games that you sort of shepherded.
I was thinking about what we might want to talk about with Airworld, but I don't know if I want to talk about it too much. I feel like we'd be giving away too much.
We can talk a little bit about it, but we've got Haunted House on the screen, so let's start there, and then if we have time, we'll do Airworld. How's that?
Well, maybe jump into Haunted House.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump into the original first for a couple of seconds. So
sure.
I'm going to talk about the history of the original game. Usually thought it was being the first survival horror game, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's believed to be,
very
the first
early
survival horror game.
Yeah.
There was nothing else like it on the market, that's for sure. But this original game is like, it's so simple, and you essentially light a match, and you can't see anything beyond the range of that match, other than the enemies, and you can see how simple the environment is. Just a really fun game that you would play with the lights out, and it was creepy. I don't think there's anything else like it.
No, it was. I mean, I remember being a kid playing this and going, "Wow, okay," and it was amazing. That was a piece of an urn. So the point of the game is to go through and collect three pieces of an urn and then escape the house.
Yeah. So and there's a bit of luck involved because the placement of the urn pieces is random, and you had to try to use as few matches as possible to find the urn pieces and then escape. You had to understand the layout of the house. So when you start playing this, you're like, where do I go? What do I do? Right. So eventually you get used to the layout and you start to explore and you're finding the urn pieces. And a lot of people would, basically talk about, oh, I made it through with 3 matches.
Right.
I found that was sort of
that's your
the
currency.
Goal. Right. Exactly. And I didn't lose any lives. That kind of thing. That sprite there, that was a spider. There's another piece of the urn. So you can see just like the spider, there's a bat and a ghost that wanders around. And
you got all 3 parts.
Yeah.
I should point out that none of the doors are locked. On the harder versions of this game, doors are locked. You have to get keys. You have to juggle holding pieces of the urn with a key that'll let you into different areas. This is sort of like the basic, the default easiest mode. But this gets really quite tricky, and it's not easy.
Yeah, in the harder levels, you don't see the walls at all, right? So as soon as you go to the next difficulty level, it's just blackness. And however, the lighting, the shape of the match, basically reveals where the walls are. So you end up like bumping into walls and trying different things to get through, and you don't know if a door is there. So you kind of have to just again keep exploring the environments to get through.
I thought that was the way out.
That should be the way out. Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
And it plays a little like Twilight Zone style.
Yeah.
So that's the goal of the game. It's really simple, right? There's just some modifications to that, adding locked doors, adding some more spiders, I believe, and things like that.
So you start this project, and you are given the challenge of, just like the old Atari programmers, generally one-person shows, one main designer, programmer doing everything. What do you want to do? And you said, I love survival horror. I want to do Haunted House. I want to do an updated version of Haunted House.
Yeah, it was. My original vision was it would be pretty simple. It'd be an overhead view only, and the goals would be the same. You find 3 pieces of the urn, escape the mansion, but I was going to add, a simple 3D sort of environment to that. Probably just have, red, green, blue, yellow kind of floors, and add 2-player, and maybe add some unique light sources. So you'd have a torch, and we would add some lighting to the 3D world, that kind of thing. So that was the idea at first. It was going to be really simple, but as soon as I started exploring the camera, as you can see here, if you hit the left trigger, this is the overhead view that I started with, and you can see, the eyeballs are always looking at the camera, so they look like, flat eyeballs to a degree, right? And I guess, I don't know, when the camera came down behind the eyeballs, I was like, wait a minute, this is pretty cool. This could be really atmospheric. And at that point, I decided, okay, I'm gonna add a lot more to this game. So I started adding different environments and started working on all of the 3D models, building them out, creating more details in the world. It's all very simple. It's all voxel based, but it just sort of was very fluid at that point. I was like, okay, I'm just going to try all these different things. So, and then, with 2-player as well, we have a split screen mode. So when you play 2-player, so that's a shield. So all of the light sources, there's a torch, there's a headlamp, and there's a wand. Each one of them has kind of a special ability. And they're not really documented anywhere. You kind of have to find, there's some clues in the world that tell you, there's tips in the world that tell you what to do later. But what Chris just showed you was the shield. If you hold down the X button on the Xbox controller, eventually it charges up. You have to do the
thing, yeah. I was holding the left trigger for some reason.
Eventually it charges up and creates the shield around the player. And actually 2 players can fit inside of it. So if you're playing 2-player, they're both protected. And the ghost is attracted to that. So the ghost will rush at it, and if the ghost hits it, it gets whisked away.
Oh, nice.
So you have to time it correctly. So if the ghost is too far, I mean, the shield's only up for a brief moment. If the ghost is too far, the shield will go away, it won't be recharged, and someone's going to get hit. So
you're looking at the influence of me and Dan on this game, by the way.
Oh, yeah. So I wanted to bring this up. So when I initially, so this is the tutorial level we're seeing right now, and when I initially built this out, it was pretty boring. It was just like, here are some nodes you can step onto and get a tip. But we didn't have any personality. My text certainly was not entertaining at that point. So we brought Dan and Chris on the case and added this character called Ernie, and very aptly named. And he's the urn, or he's a urn. He's not the urn in the game necessarily, but he's telling you, well, he is telling you,
he is the
urn
in the game.
Yeah. He talks to you. So there's just a lot more personality. This brings a lot more personality. So you'll see him throughout.
This personality is for the tutorial. Dad jokes, really. I mean, like we took every opportunity to make a joke about being a jar, being an urn, being cremated, being dead.
Container puns. Any container pun, yes, you could come up with.
Yeah, lots of supernatural jokes, and
I was thrilled that you guys did it because it added a lot of charm and personality to the game overall.
There's a ghost.
You'll notice, the outside of the screen, the borders of the screen are overcome with black smoke when you are near a source of danger, generally the ghost.
Right. So when you're in a space where the ghost also resides, you'll see this effect around the screen, and you'll hear a layer of audio kick in that's kind of creepy, right? And it tells you, hey, danger is nearby. And in the tutorial, we tell you don't run, because if you run, that's when the ghost can sort of detect where you are. You make a lot of noise, and it can sense you, right? So you have to be very careful. Now you can see, if you look down there, and you're actually safe here, so you don't have to worry. but the ghost is creeping around over there. You can see that there's a light source, a glow around him. But as long as you keep your distance, and you can also hide behind things. So if you go behind these crates, these boxes, etc., he won't be able to see you. So this tutorial is making it very simple. There's no way he's actually going to get you unless you walk directly towards him.
I have walked directly towards him.
Yeah.
During
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
I have
Just
screwed
for
this
fun.
up so many times.
I have
Now, note that so the torch went out.
Right.
So I'm gonna try to get to the exit here.
Oh, you're running out of time too.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
You
still
also have
you
to
said
light the
50
torch.
seconds.
So
light
one
the torch. You have
one
to
of the
make sure
mechanics.
the torch is lit.
Yeah. So one of the mechanics from the original game is you can't see any objects that, or when your torch is out, when your light source is out, you can't see any objects, and they also have to be close enough to you. So that's the way the original game worked as well. So I wanted to make sure that we were sort of honoring a lot of the mechanics of the original game.
Sure.
In here. So again, the goal is the same: find 3 pieces of the urn, escape the mansion. And the little things like that, like you can't see an item. You can only carry one item at a time. So when you pick up an item, you drop the item you were carrying. So those are the sort of pillars of the original game, right? And here's an extra tip.
It's just a reminder, like what it is you're doing. Because the thing is, the tutorial really takes you through with each tip, and then on the first real level, you're sort of like thrown in, and it's no longer a linear progression. It is a sort of an open haunted house that you're going around.
Could you
So
show a
it's
little
like-
two-player? I think if we unplug this controller and plug in that controller, you can jump on.
Yeah. Do I have to exit out? It's not jump
Yeah.
in, jump out, right?
Yeah, it's not drop in two-player, but yeah, if you go back
to menu.
there.
Back to menu.
So this is something new for this, and again, this is an exclusive game within Atari 50, the anniversary celebration. This comes out next week. We're showing you a sneak peek now, a week before it comes out, first on Twitch, thanks to the generosity of Atari, because Atari wants to inspire your generosity to donate to Extra Life. This is a fundraising stream. You'll see we've got $1,270. We've gotten some more money while we've been walking and talking here through haunted houses. Thank you so much, but please, yes, $1, $5, anything. This all goes to a local children's hospital, the Benioff Center here in Oakland. So
What's up?
What? You have the key. You
I
got
have
the
the,
end.
oh, today.
Or we can go. So sorry.
please explain.
Yeah. So here's the
Come
deal.
on
so,
in, fine.
So, let me
No.
explain that. So I have I have a
Hey,
headlamp.
I'm getting bit by rats.
Yeah. Come on in here.
Get in here. Oh, you want me to go in here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me just explain.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Real quick. So go ahead and drop the key. Just press the A button.
And there's
drop
this
it.
is how you know, by the way. There's the exit. There's
Yeah.
your eyeballs. Yeah.
So there's a lot of, so this is telling you, here's the exit.
Oh.
So unlike
Okay,
the
there's
original
the key.
game where you're wondering, where's the exit?
How do I get out?
So each house in this game has a very clear, distinct sign that tells you, here's the exit. So anyway, so this is the head beamer here, or the green
the
beamer.
green beam.
The
Yeah.
green beamer, which is a headlamp, and you can see it sort of gives you an indication of where items are. So here is a key. I can see it there. Now if I go, if you maybe open this, oh wait, let me pick this up. So let's go in here.
Hey.
I'm just gonna drop it right here.
You just
Spiders.
did the thing to me that.
So the thing is, you
Yeah.
can see through walls.
now I'm
So
scared and alone.
if I'm on the other side of the wall, I can see it.
Oh,
And basically,
ghost.
yeah.
Get out.
Uh-oh.
Ah!
Got struck. So essentially, the
Dang,
headlamp
ghost
lets
got
you
you, huh?
see items through walls. So if the key was like on the other side of this door, I could see it. It would peek through. So that's the ability of the headlamp. But the headlamp doesn't have good defenses against the ghost, like you do with the shield. So anytime the ghost is nearby, you can just fire that shield up, and the ghost should rush at it.
Right.
It'll go away.
I think you added that mechanic after I had done my big playthrough of this, so I wasn't
Yeah,
aware that
so-
that was a thing, and because I kept thinking like, gee, the ghost is constantly getting me, and I'm just really good at attracting it. How do I? And so that's the mechanic that sort of gives the
Go ahead
player
and
more.
Fire the shield up now, because he'll come.
Can you? He just did it. Oh, there you go.
He'll come through the wall, but it's in the
Oh, I
way.
saw him.
So
He
yeah.
bounced off.
So
Yep.
if we know he's nearby, even if he's through a wall, he's going to come through. So that's basically how you use the shield.
That's nice. Chris, you're being suggested that you shift a little bit closer to Dave so that you can be fully seen on camera, but I think you're okay. But Kawaii Panda X says, those particles look expensive. Kawaii Panda X is Ian Sherman, who you will meet throughout the weekend. We're streaming for 3 full days, 12 hours a day, and Ian is actually anchoring most of our Extra Life stream.
Can you?
He's one of our other engineers here, too, so he knows how much particles cost in our game engines.
No,
I can't hear you.
Left
Do what?
trigger. Left trigger.
Okay.
And look at the wall.
This wall?
No, let's see. Keep going down that way.
Down here.
Look to the right.
Look to the right.
And
Look at this!
So this is a
Well.
This is a little thing that
I hadn't seen this before.
You haven't seen this before?
No, I hadn't spotted this Easter egg.
You recognize this game?
I
Can
do.
anybody
It's
name this
Outlaw,
game?
right?
It's
Yes.
Outlaw for the 2600.
So like I put a little cactus there, and I was like, wait a minute, I can make the cactus the same shape as the cactus in Outlaw, and then I'll create some silhouettes there. So if you go over, you'll see the other guy on the other side of the cactus from
Go on the
Outlaw.
other side of the cactus?
Yeah. So there's.
Oh, look at
So
that.
That's very cute.
So there's a lot of little things like this, like homages and references to various Atari games. There's also homages to movies from the era.
Right.
We're going to get sued. We're going to get sued for voxels.
I hope not. But Ian, so just back to Ian's point about the particles, they are expensive. And we had to deal with, through development and porting to different platforms, I had to make some changes.
I feel like we're being set up, but Kawaii Panda X says, that torch effect looks really cool. Who made that?
Me? Well, okay. I made the torch, the actual like animated torch, but I had a different torch before, and Ian said it looked like a Q-tip. So I said, all right, I'm going to make a real torch. And I went and animated this torch.
I'm glad you did. It looks great.
All the lighting, though, is Rich Whitehouse.
Okay.
So I give him full credit for the lighting, which we didn't have originally. It took a little bit of time to get that in place, and once we did, man,
Found an
it
urn in the bathroom.
Really changed everything. So.
Rich
So,
Whitehouse is
basically-
also the engineer who created our Jaguar emulator from scratch.
The
for
Jaguar
this.
Master.
How do the eyeballs poop in the toilet? Have you thought this through?
I was going to make
That's
a ghost.
an Easter egg, right? Like
I was going to put a ghost in the toilet.
Well,
like
you did.
We're running out of time, so this is another thing.
Sure.
This is something in the game. You can see that the clock is ticking down, so there's going to be 30 seconds left here. We're playing just Ghost Hunter mode, which is a basic normal mode. If the clock runs out, that just means you lose your bonus at the end of the level. But if you play Ghost Rush mode,
There's a Fuji in there.
when the clock runs out, it's game over, and you only have 2 minutes.
This seems like something.
So
I recognize that sprite, but it's not from a game that's in the collection.
it's not from any game.
Uh-oh.
It's
Oh,
not
really?
from-
Oh,
It's just
It
a little
reminded me
thing.
of the Defender / Stargate ship. It's just a spaceship.
Me too.
And this this small square on the ground you can see right here, this is the marble from Marble Madness.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. I thought it was the hero from Adventure.
Let's
there.
go up. Let's just go up. If we don't die.
So yeah, the timer has run out, and you're not.
So you
done.
don't get a bonus
You just
Not
don't
getting
get
a
a
for your
bonus.
time.
Yeah. Are we going?
The
where
ghost
are we
is
going?
up here. Yeah, come on up. Go up the stairs. Let's see if you can.
Do we want to look at Sword Quest?
We've got
we don't-
7 minutes left.
Okay,
We can go
let's-
a little bit over if you'd like, but
Okay.
I was just going to show.
we need some time to set up Jeopardy too.
There's some more references up here
Yeah. Where are we going to?
where you
Three?
were before. So go up the stairs,
Oh,
and you just ran, so the
ghosted.
ghost got you.
I got ghosted.
So I mean, this
We
is
might not be
all
able to
right.
show
Well,
this.
real quick,
Yeah.
this is the air sea battle ship,
Right.
right? And actually, if you look closely, I don't know if you can see because it's pretty dark, but there's the actual like turret is down here in the floor. It's kind of like shaded.
Oh,
okay.
okay. I see
So
it a
it's-
little bit.
it's-
Yeah.
It's hard to see without there. I don't know if you saw it,
Oh,
but
yeah.
so that's another example. Like there's the ship, the turret is over there. So little things to find hidden all around the world. Lots of little Easter eggs. This radio might do something. I don't know.
Oh, well, if you don't know, we don't know.
But look for little things. There's also some hidden ghosts. So you might approach something and hear a sound, and your torch might go out. And you don't know why. Well, look around and observe.
All
That's
right.
all I gotta
I like
say.
it when you give players credit for doing stuff and looking around.
So for the so if you don't know about the Sword Quest series in general, I mean, Atari envisioned this incredible. It was going to be a quadrilogy of games, each of which it was called the $150,000 Sword Quest Challenge, as you can see there, and you were going to be able to solve puzzles that were in these games for the chance to compete and win literally probably the most expensive, most elaborate prizes that have ever to this day been given out like a video game competition. Chalices and precious just for solving the puzzles, basically. Chalices. There was the chalice. There was and finally, leading up to the Sword of Ultimate Sorcery, which was worth a ridiculous amount of money with gold and gems and things like that. They say $150,000 is what it was worth in like the early 1980s. Like the price of gold and precious metals and gems and things of that nature have shot up a lot since then, plus inflation. So we're really talking about like a lot of money.
It was a tremendous amount of money back then.
And so to really be able to play these games, you actually have to have this ancillary material. Like if we just gave you the Sword Quest ROM, you would have no idea what you were doing. Even with the extra material, you're really not going to have any idea what you're doing. But you have to read these comics. You can even see there's a little bit of a puzzle in this. In this rhyme, maybe you can find it. The answer.
No big hints there.
Yeah. But there's plenty of there's all these secrets in here. Dan, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, it's just that clues that you would find during gameplay would lead you back to this comic book, which, if you're a DC fan, Jerry Conway is one of the people that was involved in this. George Perez doing this artwork. Like,
and this is
DC
as gorgeous as this comic has ever looked in a collection as well. All these pages rescanned, color corrected, cleaned.
So you would have to go back and forth between what you were learning in gameplay. They assumed you would be taking notes and then cross-reference back to the comic book and figure out what it was you were supposed to be solving for, and then send that in. And if you sent in the correct answer and the correct methodology, then you might be invited to a playoff. And that's what happened. Is there was a $25,000 talisman. The way that the money breaks down is each prize was worth $25,000 and made by the Franklin Mint, which Warner Brothers owned both Atari and DC, and the Franklin Mint all at the same time. So that was why they were all sort of working together on this massive project. Waterworld was the third game in the series, which happened when the industry was in decline, and so it was printed in very limited numbers. Most people have never played it, but we have the complete thing because Mike Micah has a copy. Of course he does.
Yes.
And so we scanned Mike Micah's personal copy of that comic and cleaned it up and got the necessary permissions to get it in there. But there was no fourth game. They had announced Airworld as the final game, and they got as far as concept art, but no playable ROM. There has always been rumors. People have claimed to have had EPROMs. None of those things exist. There was just concepts that Todd Fry, the designer of the overall series, said, well, here's what I was planning on doing and what I wanted to do. So in comes Dave Reese with just about that much information to start doing this fourth game.
And not a lot of time.
Right.
So it was, you've got 4 weeks to make this game. I guess that's the same amount of time they had to make games.
Sometimes.
But really the inspiration came from all of that information that's out there, particularly what Todd Fry had to say about it, and a bit of just the background being I Ching, right, was sort of the main driver of this, and that made things really easy. We knew up front we weren't going to be doing a comic, so that was a challenge. How are we going to create that same experience where you're playing this game and you need some type of reference material? I actually don't want to show the manual yet.
Okay.
I know why.
Yeah, fair enough.
We don't want to show the manual yet because
It's an authentic looking Atari 2600 manual. It was written for this project.
Exactly. But I will tell you what's in it. There's if you look up and do some research on I Ching, one of the first things you'll see is this grid, which is an 8x8 grid where there are these things called trigrams, which are 3 lines, either solid or broken, and then there's 8 vertical and there's 8 horizontal, and that makes 64 different cells, right? And as soon as I saw that, I thought, there it is. Here's the world of Sword Quest, and we can use this chart to reference information. So each trigram, 2 trigrams together make a hexagram. a hexagram has a meaning can have or can be part of a puzzle, right? So we can create a story around that.
So what you're seeing on the floor are the actual hexagrams of the I Ching, and each of these symbols has a meaning, and the instruction manual will help you determine what the meanings of those things are and how they're relevant to the overall puzzle. In the lower left, you'll see that's the 8x8 grid. So those are the rooms of Airworld.
Yeah.
We're doing. And that was originally you had that 8x8 grid down there as a debugging tool, right? And everybody was like, "Oh, thank God, you've got the map there. Oh, that's so great."
It was necessary.
Yeah.
So we're doing a few things in the game too. We're not. So I wanted to make sure this looked and felt like a Sword Quest game.
Right.
It wasn't just some like new game that came out of nowhere that didn't match what the originals looked like, what they felt like. So I took a lot of material from the first game. Particularly, you can see the sprite of the character. If the character stops moving, you'll see a little animation there. That's kind of taken from the original game. If you look at Airworld, you'll see it's very, very similar. So in navigating from room to room, you'll see that effect where you're sort of flying from room to room. That's also taken from the original game. And Earthworld really was my inspiration. So, and here we have a mini game, which is obviously based on. Can anybody guess?
I'm going to say Tempest.
Wrong.
Get ready for wrong answers, because Jeopardy is coming up soon.
This is obviously and very clearly based on
Astro Smash.
Yes.
Astro Smash, yeah.
There you go.
That game.
For the television.
So yeah, obviously Space Invaders, but it's not Space Invaders, right?
Oh, now I get it.
Space Invaders is copyright
Space
Square
Invaders.
No ownership is implied.
But Earthworld and Fireworld and Waterworld all had mini games, and you would have to prove yourself in these action mini games in order to unlock certain rooms that might have key items that you would need to solve the overall puzzle. So it wasn't just wandering around and wondering what everything meant. You also needed to be good as a Twitch gamer, as it were.
Yeah, and what you're seeing here is nice.
That was it. You nailed the cloud.
So the way the game works is the storm cloud is going across the top. If it strikes your shield barrier 3 times, your shield goes away, and if lightning strikes the ground, you're done. So
you might ask here, Chris, what are you doing? There are various items, and so when you press the button, you can see what items are currently in the room, and then you can see what items are currently in your inventory, and you can put some items from your inventory in the room, and you could take some items from the room and put them in your inventory. So yeah.
So that's
what I'm doing.
I guess you can't say much more than that.
Yeah, we can't.
Okay,
Yeah.
But this will be fully playable. There is no save state in this, right?
There's no save state, so this is old school real.
Yeah.
This is like good luck. When people originally played this, there were no save states.
That's right.
They had to take notes. They had reference material. They had to write things down and figure out, solve the puzzles, right? And then submit their answers.
I also want to point out, because you're seeing some of the sort of the graphical effect here, this comes with the filter on, but you can turn on enhanced mode and play this at 60 frames per second. You just wanted to accurately represent what this would have looked like had it been a 2600 game that came out in 1984 and 1985, right?
Do you want to do enhanced mode?
Yeah, if you can leave the filter on, but enhanced mode on, you go back and suddenly look, it's a gorgeous
60 frames a second.
60 frames a second game.
So yeah, we wanted to approximate sort of the 2600 feel.
You're so much better at this than I am.
Nice job.
That was great.
We wanted
Have
to
a pile
approximate
of
it,
mud.
simulate it.
Sweet. Oh, look, the poop. The poop. Hold on.
I
Yeah,
believe
drop
that's a
something.
plate. I'm not
Can't
sure.
take everything. Got to drop some stuff. I'm going to drop this thing of whatever. Yep.
Yeah, inventory management is part of the challenge of Earthworld. You find things, you have to map where they are, you have to remember where they are, you have to find out which ones are the most important and things like that. So, all right. I think we should move on to Jeopardy, because Ian is here, and Ian, who we've been talking about, who is really our guiding light for all of our Extra Life streaming, and has really been sort of aiming at
Jaguar game.
Show one Jaguar game?
Okay,
We haven't shown a Jaguar game for a while, have we? Or did we show a Jaguar game at all?
I thought Stephen was talking about.
Yeah, I thought Stephen had shown something, but I mean, he spoke about it at length, but I don't know if he
we
actually
go.
played anything.
What did I just do? Why did I do that?
Oh, well.
Well, you were there, so
Oh, I can do
you
it.
can go to the library.
Yes, we have an exclusive Jaguar emulator that was built for this collection by Rich Whitehouse.
Yeah.
Did an amazing job. We showed this off at Portland Portland Retro Gaming Expo as well. Had a lot of Jaguar owners and collectors and nitpickers honestly come up, and they were very happy with how it looks, how it feels. They felt that this was an excellent Jaguar emulator and that they were really excited about it. If you are collecting Jaguar games, then you know that Jaguar games have gotten extremely expensive. There
Yep.
are not a ton of them, but there are not a ton of them. So, people who are trying to make complete collections are often frustrated.
Pretty much anything complete in box
Yeah.
is pretty expensive right now. Yeah.
But here's a way for you to understand what the appeal is of this probably
Game over.
underestimated and underappreciated system at the time. It had a lot of competition. Again, part of our timeline will tell you all of what Atari was going through corporately and what was going on in the industry at the time and why Jaguar turned out the way that it did. And what Jaguar's appeal is for people still today. We spoke to people who worked with the Jaguar at Atari in the 90s. So you're going to have a lot of context. That's the key word for this entire interactive documentary is, do these games now have context? Do you understand why they were made the way they were made? Can we ask the people who made them to come in and explain why they were made the way they were made? So we're really hoping that when you get your hands on this next week, Friday the 11th is the launch date for Atari 50, the anniversary celebration. Please dig into the timeline. You can always jump to whatever game you remember and play and have fun, and we want that too. We didn't want to take that away from anybody. But we really are trying to put it in a historical context so that you understand Atari's importance on the industry, Atari's decisions made at the time, what it all means. This is Jeff Minter's classic Atari Tempest 2000. He's obviously inspired by classic coin-ops, so the opportunity for him to be able to play with one of the original IPs and do this just blew everybody's mind at the time. And Minter's very psychedelic personal style is very much on display here, but this plays super, super nice. I was very, very impressed at how well it plays. Even though it was originally just a D-pad game, it works really well on analog stick.
Can you go into Cybermorph real quick?
Yeah.
I just want to show one thing.
You want to show how you learned to fly?
Just jump into a game. All right. So one of the challenges we had was making all the inputs for Jaguar fit on the controller. So, we weren't sure how we were going to do that at first, and we explored a few different options. What we came up with was use the right analog stick. And so we have this little overlay interface. And this basically takes the key parts of the overlay on the Jaguar and just allows you to quickly select them. So you can change your camera view, that type of thing. The types of inputs that aren't really crucial to moment-to-moment gameplay.
Right.
We added to the radio menu, and that way we could use one input source to handle any one of those inputs. And there are a few games, there are a few Jaguar games that support it, and some 5200 games as well, because that also has a number.
Right, 5200 had a keyboard as well.
Yeah, Star Raiders.
Oh, we didn't get a chance to show Star Raiders, but I hope that people check out Star Raiders because there are some enhancements here that make it more playable than ever on modern console systems without ruining a single part of what made that game so legendary on both home computers and the 5200. So, but we'll leave that for you next week when this game comes out. Atari 50, the anniversary celebration, shipping 11/11. Physical pre-orders are up now. Digital will be available day one. You can wishlist it on all major platforms in the meantime. And there is a collector's Switch edition with a steelbook. We just got our copy of the steelbook, and it is pretty gorgeous. Comes with an exclusive art poster as well as a gold steelbook. It's lovely. So if you're interested in what you've seen today, first of all, thank you. Second of all, thank Atari for letting us show this a week before it comes out. And third, please do not forget to support our fundraising part of this, which is part of Extra Life 2022. We've got $1,200 so far. We want to see that number continue to go up over the next 3 days. We'll be streaming 12 hours a day, and you'll meet lots of different developers here, but mostly Ian Sherman. And Ian is coming up next to be one of the contestants on Jeopardy. So we're going to play a live game of Jeopardy. We're going to need a couple of seconds to get everything set up. So please don't go away, but this is a great time for a bathroom break for everybody here, as well as you at home. We'll be right back with a live game of Jeopardy. Stick around, and thanks for tuning in, and thanks for supporting us here at Digital Eclipse while we raise some funds for Extra Life. Enjoy Atari 50 next week. We'll be right back.